Welcome back, everybody, to another Oscars tier list video series. Last time we did was all the Best Picture nominees of the 21st century so far, from 2000 all the way up to 2024. And we are continuing with that trend, but this time the non Best Picture top 8 movies. Um, so, for those who don't know what that is, that specifically means that they are in the top 8 categories but did not get in for Best Picture. So, whether it be a standalone Best Directing nominee, or just sticking in the acting categories or in the screenplay categories. So, none of them in the technical categories or anything like that. These are just all the other films that were in the 7 of the top 8 categories. Now, I know there are a couple of these films that were top 8 movies that are also nominated in international feature and even some in animated feature. But I will give them more of a sum up when I get to those tier lists. But they will have a proper more discussion, like a mini review about each of these in this tier list video specifically, since they got up in the top 8 categories. So obviously, this is of course going to be focusing on a lot of films here. We've got a lot here to talk about now. I guarantee when we get into the 2020s, I guarantee these videos are going to get a bit shorter. So like, because we're in the 2000s right now, as we will begin with 2000 through 2004. So I will tell you that there is most likely that these first two parts at least, and maybe 3 and 4, but I would say it will get shorter by the time once we get into the 2009 when the picture expansion began. So if you've not seen the Best Picture tier list video, this is of course how status is going. Of course, the rankings is obviously double F. That's just like a big fat F, or just like one of the worst movies that was ever nominated at the Oscars. Theft, an F, excuse me. I don't know why I said theft. F is just something like I really did not like or just specifically pissed me off. You can also say the same thing, of course, about E, D, C. Well, obviously, if you get the rankings, like D was a disappointment, C is just okay, B is good, not great, A is great, S is amazing, but double S tier, that is obviously the tier that I consider to be a masterpiece, like a perfect 10 out of 10 or an A plus, and I found no issues to the film. So let's see how many films would able to get to that tier. So we'll see how this goes. So we start up the year 2000 with Almost Famous from Cameron Crowe, which of course, as many of you know, it did not get nominated for Best Picture. Probably one of the biggest Best Picture snubs of the 2000s, and it ended up getting nominated in the highest in the top 8. Two supporting actress nominations for Kate Hudson and Frances McDormand, and it won original screenplay for Cameron Crowe. I don't think I'm not going to need any explanation about where Almost Famous is going to go. It's going to go in S tier. I mean, what a way to start on this. So yeah, I do agree. It's easily one of the best films from 25 years ago. It's just a fantastic coming of age movie that is not really the typical format. It's just basically like obviously this 12th grader or something like that decides just to or isn't, I believe, yeah, because he skipped a year in school as his mother made him, specifically to just basically well, okay, that's not really the main plot. I don't know what I'm talking about, but obviously, what our main kid does. I know Patrick is the actor's name, but I just forget what his character's name was. But obviously, just going a little bit of trying to make a big, writing a big article of interviewing an iconic music icon of a band, specifically because obviously his big sister, played by Zoe Deschanel, really kind of helped his influence a bit after she decided to leave her mom, which of course that's Frances McDormand. Oh, William. That's yeah. William's the name. William is the name of the kid. That's right. So like with leaving William to listen to all of her hidden musics and her mother by themselves, and then when William grows up, he decides just to almost skip his entire last year in high school and just specifically go and just follow this band throughout the entire season just to interview the lead singer, but getting in through obviously a girl played, of course, by Kate Hudson, of course. Man, it's been 25 years since that, and she's now in potential Oscar conversation this year for Song Sun Blue. But yeah, she would have been my pick for Best Supporting Actress. Definitely a deserved win for Original Screenplay, although Aaron Brockovich is a very close second. I haven't done a finalist yet on my personal Oscar lineup for the 2000s. I'm actually kind of trying to finishing them up. Like once all these tier list videos are done, then the lineups for the 2000s will most likely happen. But yeah, this is definitely a movie that definitely should have got in for Best Picture, directing for Cameron Crowe. Um, so yeah, fantastic ensemble cast, fantastic coming of age story. So yeah, well written film and well made film that has definitely great use for not just coming of age but also for the music genre as well. Next up is Before Night Falls by Julian Schnabel, who many of you might know of, who did a couple of actually two films that we'll have also discuss a little bit later on in this series with The Diving Bell and The Butterfly and At Eternity's Gate, and just also did his recent film In the Hand of Dante that premiered at Venice, starring Oscar Isaac. And this is of course a biopic on Ronaldo Arenas, who is a famous poet, novelist, and playwright. Massive in of course Cuba, but he's also a very notable, famous homosexual that unfortunately did died from AIDS. I am gonna put this one in B. I think Javier Bardem's performance, which that was the highest nomination for the film to do, that was a fantastic performance from him. He really did captivated the real life person's persona and what he wants to do. I think it's just what the rest of the movie kind of basically is. It's just basically him being a wanted criminal as a massive critic to Fidel Castro, and obviously the whole scenes where he's in prison very brutal. But Bardem's performance and Schnabel's direction really did a pretty good job here. But Bardem's performance is really spot on. So I can see why he did got that Best Actor nomination. And this was actually his first nomination for his career. And then of course he would later on win for No Country for Old Men. Okay, now we had to zoom out a little bit to show more of the posters that are going to be coming. But let's talk about now Billy Elliot from Stephen Daldry. Obviously, the movie about a young kid who goes from a boxer to learning ballet. Um, so obviously, this is definitely a movie that has kind of really aged well, especially nowadays. We've seen a lot of more male ballerina dancers and even I would say nowadays male cheerleaders. So that's another great example of that, even though there are some people that are completely against it. But I do think this movie really did captivate it. It's almost did got in the picture lineup. It got in for original screenplay for Lee Hall, supporting actress for Julia Walters, and directing for Daltrey without the movie getting the picture lineup. But it didn't get like Gary Lewis for supporting actor or Jamie Bell for best actor, who actually won the BAFTA, by the way, when he was just a kid here. Like, this is a very young Jamie Bell. Many of you might know him in a couple of other films. Most notably, I think, if you've seen The Adventures of Tintin, he obviously does play the titular character. So that's probably, like, I know a famous role he has done. I know he did Film Stars Don't Die at Liverpool. He did All of Us Strangers not that long ago as well. I am giving this one an A. It really captivates the use of not just how this boy wants to change and almost becoming a fantastic ballet dancer, but also try to really improve it away from like his father and maybe his brothers as well, especially his father, of course, with the relationship that he has with him. And then obviously with Julie Walters as this coach, she does a fantastic job in that. Definitely deserved that nomination for supporting actress, and that's her last nomination to date. I think she had two nominations in the 80s, but I forget which ones. But she hadn't done something like Brooklyn was probably the closest film she would have gotten into, and obviously we now know, of course, as she was in Mary Poppins Returns, and many of us know her in the Paddington films. But yeah, this is definitely a fantastic use of ballet and just use of the dancing, of course, and obviously where Billy is coming from. And I know, obviously, there was the Tony Award winning Broadway musical, and I obviously did talked about the song Shine in the Macy's Parade Rank the Songs 2009 video. I think was in the very bottom of the list. I don't know which number it was. I don't have the video on me, but um, I didn't really like that number, so I don't know what how the full musical actually goes into compared to the movie, so I can't really say. Even though it did had like Daltrey as the director of the musical, by the way, so that was pretty unique. Bringing like a lot of the film crew, like Lee Hall, also to write the what was it? What they did they call it? It wasn't scripted. They call it what? Book of a musical. That's what they call it. And yeah, that's what they call it. So it's kind of confusing how they call it Book of a Musical. That just makes no sense. But yeah, definitely a great movie. Yeah, it definitely would have been a good Best Picture nomination in place of something. Same thing with Almost Famous. But there are a couple of other films here in from this year that also would have been great nominees. Speaking of another great movie that could have been a great Best Picture nominee, Castaway from Robert Zemeckis. Wilson! Wilson! Yeah, I couldn't resist. Yeah, I think this is going into S tier. This is a fantastic survival movie from Tom Hanks and Robert Zemeckis. It's really a shame it only got 2 nominations, not just for Hanks' performance, but for sound, which definitely deserved that nomination. But that was it. Like no cinematography, no film editing, no directing, not even original screenplay, because Hanks's dialogue kind of really does also captivate a bit, especially when you get to when he actually officially returns home when we get into what is the third act of the film. But yeah, this is definitely one of the best survival movies that I think has very well done so well. It's really a massive phenomenon. Hanks almost did won this, and obviously with his connection with Robert Zemeckis, it's like this is obviously one of his more positivity sides. In like a lot of his some of his negativity sides, like the Disney live action remake of Pinocchio, even though I've not seen that remake, but obviously, other than Forrest Gump, Castaway is definitely probably one of the positivities. Some would say the Polar Express, but when he plays too many characters and does almost 95% of the motion capture, that just seems odd. But yeah, but this is definitely a fantastic survival movie of surviving on an island, and it's very interesting because I think late in September and August, I was binge watching Gilligan's Island on Tubi, and it's a fantastic show, by the way. And obviously, with having the knowledge, with even watching a lot of gameplays of the video on YouTube of the video game Raft, that game really kind of did showed like what to do in surviving through a beach from a real life perspective. Even though there are some weird things, especially when obviously Hanks' only deal with when it comes to what he has to do is obviously with all the FedEx packages that he has left over, except for one he never opened. Especially in the third act when he reunites with his wife and what has happened, which I won't give it away, but you might know what it is. But it is a very emotional and reality aspect for it. So, definitely a fantastic survival movie, and another movie has really stood the test of time as one of Zemeckis' best of the century so far. Some people would even say The Walk or Flight, for an example. We'll get to Flight a little bit later in the third part of this tier list. Continuing on with another fantastic, great movie from the year 2000, The Contender, which is basically kind of a political thriller of the president wants to have this woman be the new vice president of the United States, who is played by Joan Allen, with the president played by Jeff Bridges. But there might be some potential controversies or some scandals that could potentially prevent her from being the vice president, led by, I believe, Gary Oldman in that cast. And it's really a fantastic acting movie and a really great one. I did got this on Blu-ray, I think this year throughout the Amazon Prime sale as well. I have Castaway. I really also, by the way, really hope we want to try to get the Paramount Presents Blu-ray of Almost Famous, but I've yet to get that. As for The Contender, I am putting this one in. I'm gonna put this in B. Like, it is really well acted, really well acted. It's just I think maybe it does. The story does kind of take a bit of its time to kind of over-explain it. But I think the phenomenal performance and the direction, kind of like Before Night Falls, where they really take a test, but the story kind of really takes a little bit slow when it does it. But Joan Allen, definitely fantastic performance from her. as well as Jeff Bridges. Definitely, probably, I think my favorite Bridges nomination of this century so far. I can't really say about the 20th century, but definitely compared to this Crazy Heart, which we'll talk about in the next part, and then True Grit and Hell or High Water. I do think this is Bridges' best nominee of the 21st century. Now, I know that was kind of more of a quick sum up, but it's been a while since I've seen some of these films, so it might take a bit of a rustiness for me to remember this. So, a lot of these are going to be more quick sum ups, but unless there's something I really love to talk about. So, let's go into "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou" from the Coen brothers. Technically, it's Joe Coen, but we can all say the Coens did technically directed all their movies when Joe Coen just had the directing credit because of, I think it was Directors Guild of America rules at the time. So that's the reason why I think Ethan was just always the producer and Joe was always the director. But we know they technically both directed and produced all their films prior to No Country for Old Men when they got finally both the credits they deserve. Um, so yeah, I have been kind of hit or miss with the Coen brothers, as I have talked about in the Best Picture retrospective, of course. Obviously, yeah, I'm not really big on Oh Brother, Where Art Thou. I'm actually gonna give this one a D. It is an interesting interpretation of Homer's Odyssey, but you replace it, I think, like what, during what was it, like, so, like 50s or something like that. Like this was like around the time of, like, civil rights era, like pre-civil rights era, I would say. I forget what the setting of the movie is, but it's like obviously like the Ku Klux Klan is involved in this. Obviously, there's a bit of racism, and obviously, even though obviously our main three characters are white, but they're like innocent prisoners that are just like trying to escape from the innocence of what they were doing, led by George Clooney. And then obviously, they just do this big radio song that would like not radio song, the song that would become a big radio hit, and then they just kind of like go this cross country journey to specifically for Clooney's character to try to get back to his wife, um, and try to impress her again after she had left him, I think, or after when he got arrested. So, and then obviously the whole slavery thing aspect, interesting, but I just don't think it didn't really have the massive connection. But it does lead into the massive connection with one of the villains of the film, and obviously a friend that all three of our main characters kind of do follow along with, who is an African guitarist, I believe. So, and then the climax is fantastic. I really love the climax, but I just think the journey just kind of doesn't really feel subtle enough. It's definitely, I would say, I would go back to this more so than any of the three picture nominees they made. More so than No Country for Old Men, more so than A Serious Man, and more so than True Grit. But it's like not one of the best things I've seen from him. So we now come into Pollock, about the famous artist duo of Jackson Pollock and Lee Carnacer, I believe. I think like Jackson Pollock's wife specifically, of how these two artists end up falling in love, but Jackson has a lot of serious mental issues going on throughout it. Obviously, the famous artist has. And this obviously was nominated for two acting nominations for Ed Harris for Best Actor and one Best Supporting Actress for Marcia Gay Harden in her lead performance, the first of many category frauds of the 21st century so far, and one of the many lead performances that ends up going to win the Oscar for supporting. We'll most likely see that this year, upcoming year, with Ariana Grande and maybe Paul Mescal, for their roles. But keep in mind, I'm recording this on the day when Wicked for Good just came out, so on November 21st. At least the first part. So for Pollock, I am giving this one an A. The acting here and the story of their relationship is really fantastic, and obviously with having kind of obviously a little bit notable notoriety about art in movies, like specifically the Germany movie Never Look Away from 2018. It does kind of give me the knowledge a little bit about their art strategies, but also their relationships, especially the struggling one between both Jackson and Lee in this film, and also with all the relationships they were having. Jennifer Connelly's in this movie, and it's very ironic that she started in a lot of big major Oscar-nominated movies that were outside of A Beautiful Mind that was nominated throughout. the first half of the 2000s. Like she was on a massive roll there, starring in big major movies. Not one of I don't remember much of the performance. I forget. Was she trying to seduce Jackson's character? I'm not really sure. I don't remember. But yeah, but she had a big year in 2000 a bit. But yeah, she had a lot of big roles throughout the 2000s, like from 2000 to 2006, like some of the big Oscar-nominated movies. But we'll get to. I'll talk a little bit about Conley for another film here a little bit later on. But yeah, definitely well acted. I did got the Blu-ray of this, I believe, also during the Amazon Prime Day sale, I believe, or was it the special sale? I forget which one because it's been a while. But yeah, but I do have this one on Blu-ray as well. Fantastic movie in general. Here's another fantastic movie, really about another historic figure biopic movie, and that is Quills, from Philip Kaufman, about the Marquis de Sade, the infamous, famous playwright that was in a massive mental facility, and he's just like, oh man, I can't really go much into it, but he's like this massive playwright that is like stuck in this mental facility under religious format led by um, the Abbe de Kumar, which is a who is actually played by a walking phoenix, a French Catholic priest, and then obviously with Marco's relationship with this maid, which is played by Maddie, who is, I believe, a fictitious one, played by Kate Winslet, that Doug Wright wrote on the script. And I'm gonna put this one also. I'm gonna put this in A because there are some weird moments. Now I know this is also a biopic, but it's just like there are some weird moments that occurred in the ending. But there are some fictitious characters. But the characters, the writing and the directing really do something here. It's a fantastic period piece. Jeffrey Rush really gives it a massive, no pun intended, quill for his performance. And Joaquin Phoenix, man, I think he's the MVP of the cast. Man, like Joaquin Phoenix had a fantastic 2000 here. Like, not just with playing the villain in Gladiator, but then this insane, like, Catholic French priest in Quills. And then what happens to him goes into the ending. Oh my gosh, it's completely different. And then just obviously with the limitations that I won't go by the first name because it's hard to butcher it because it's obviously, even though it's supposed to be French, but it's all in English, of course. So if this movie was made today, it would have been all in French. But yeah, Jeffrey Rush is fantastic in here, and like with the relationship he has with obviously with Winslet's character as like I think trying to seduce the character or something like that. I'm not really sure. But the whole setting and the climax, it's just a fantastic movie in general. I don't think I have the Blu-ray of this. If I don't, I think it might be on my Amazon wishlist, but or any other Blu-ray I can try to find. But yeah, it is a fantastic movie. Yeah, it only got nominated in the top 8 for Jeffrey Rush's performance. It did got, I think, two nominations in the technical categories, but just in the top 8, it was just for Jeffrey Rush. Joaquin Phoenix. The thing is, unfortunately, obviously, for the Oscars, you cannot double nominate the same actor in the same acting category. They can be nominated for lead and supporting, but they cannot be nominated leading twice or supporting twice. So, but Phoenix, if the Oscars did not have that rule, Phoenix would have been a double nominee for me because he was fantastic in that. Kate Winslet is good, but I'm not really sure if she has a standout to me compared to Rush and Phoenix's characters. But it's been a bit since I've seen the movie as in general. Next up, Requiem for a Dream, a massive fan favorite by a lot of people from Darren Aronofsky, starring Ellen Burstyn, Jennifer Connelly, and a very young Jared Leto. Oh, man. A lot of people are not going to like this, but yeah, I don't know what the fuck was going on in that movie. At least with like Black Swan and the Whale, I get where they were going at. I'll talk a little bit more about the Whale in the 5th part of this tier list, but I just don't know what the hell or the absolute fuck is going on in Requiem for a Dream. I just don't understand, like, with all this drug substance and stuff like that, and then, like, Conley has to like character has to have sex with like people or something like that. I just it's just like it's with Burston's character at an old age. I don't remember much of what Leto's character did, but it's just I just don't know what on earth is going on. So, yeah, I'm sorry to say this, people. Like I talked about in when we got to Aaron Brockovich, Julia Roberts deserved it, but Ellen Burstyn did not need to get that Best Actress nomination, which that was the film's only nomination, by the way. And I just can't. I just don't know what to talk about this movie. It's just like I don't know what I was watching. It was an absolute mind fuck. That's basic summary about Requiem for a Dream for me in general. Next up is Shadow of the Vampire, which of course is about the making of the Nosferatu movie. Obviously, the original, of course, we're talking about since this is the year 2000. And this is actually, by the way, the last non Best Picture top 8 movie I actually had to watch. This was the last one because obviously this was all in a random order. This was not like by year order or anything like that. It was complete randomization, of course. And Shadow of the Vampire was the last film I had to watch. Wow. Like, although I'll be honest, I wasn't big on the original Nosferatu movie. I don't know what it is. Like, I think I did the best way I watched the original, how the original Nosferatu could have been like. It was, I think, was through Roku, I believe, that I watched it through. I did enjoy Robert Edgers' remake. Werner Herzog's remake was fine. But watching this film was pretty fantastic, and I'm actually going to give this one an A. Um, it's just a unique production of just seeing how um, convoluted the production was, especially with Defoe's character really playing the real actor who went a little bit too far of actually trying to be the real life Count Orlok has seen, especially in the final scene of the movie. Like, obviously, what is supposed to be Orlok's last scene where he's supposed to be seducing, obviously, the main woman he loves um, for lust, of course, I would say, but, or just feed, and it's just like, oh gosh. I don't know if that's 100% accurate, but it's just the relationship between Orlok, as he's called throughout the production, and the director who was played by John Malkovich in this movie. Oh gosh, and like obviously there's a lot of camera movements that is not like scene accurate or recreation of the original movie, but obviously this movie is its own thing. And just like seeing like the intense thing and just hearing how Defoe's character, what if the actor did spoke oak if the movie had dialogue. It's just like so intense, and obviously it's interesting that Defoe would be in Edgars' remake, but not playing the titular Orlok. He's playing like a mad scientist, of course. That would be an element in, I think, in the story, I believe. Um, but yeah, it's just so unique, and just seeing also the use of the camera and seeing like almost like there were some bloopers and stuff like that, and just seeing how this movie had to be very difficult and how it was not easy, and even behind the camera of how it almost frightened, I think, one of the camera members. And it's just like how too realistic it was, and it's just real unique that it's almost like a real life horror story in the movie. Next up is Wonder Boys, which is Curtis Hansen's follow up to LA Confidential. This was nominated in adapted screenplay for Steve Kloves. I believe I said, "Oh Brother Where Art" that was nominated for adapted. I believe I did stated that, but um, and it obviously did one for original song for Bob Dylan's song "Things Have Changed." Um, I'm gonna give this one an E. I just don't remember anything about Wonder Boys in general. I just don't remember a thing about it. So like anything from a movie that I consider to be legit boring or just I don't remember anything, they would just go in the E tier here. I just don't have a memory of this movie whatsoever. I just don't, other than like maybe Bob Dylan's song. But it's just like I don't know what else to say. I'm not even planning on rewatching the movie unless if I have to, if it like somehow comes out of Criterion, but I'm not really sure. It's just like what about writing and stuff like that? I just don't remember much of this movie. It's just like very, very forgetful. Other than this was the movie that got Bob Dylan an Oscar, that's the only thing that's probably famous about this movie. It's just Bob Dylan's song. And the last film for the year 2000 is Kenneth Lonergan's debut feature, You Can Count on Me. I am giving this one Um, a C. I just think it was just okay. I did like the concept, obviously, because I don't think there was ever you rarely see a movie where it involves around a big sister little brother story and a reunition, of course, between obviously our two characters played by Laura Linney and a very young Mark Ruffalo before he became Hulk, not Ann Lee's Hulk, but obviously Hulk in the MCU before he officially took over Edward Norton's in the MCU. So like this was like one of his very early roles before he became a big A-list actor in the 2010s. So um, it's just like it's a very interesting concept where obviously he's coming back to help his sister out, especially obviously looking after her child and stuff like that. It's just I think their relationship status just didn't work as well, especially the more secret revealment of who the child's real life father was, and it's just like, and obviously the health issues that Ruffalo's character has, where he went from a young boy to something completely different. I just don't really think it was nominated for original screenplay for Lonergan and actress for Laura Linney. I just feel like it was okay. Manchester by the Sea is obviously fantastic, of course, but and I was really looking forward to watching this, but then I felt like it's just fine. It just like didn't really felt great or anything. So, yeah, I think that's where I will leave it at that. All right, now we're into the year 2001. Many people would consider to be one of the best years of cinema. And once again, this of course is in alphabetical order, and we will start this up with Ali for Michael Mann, which earned a Best Supporting Actor nomination for Jon Voight, and which was his last one nomination, by the way, and Best Actor for Will Smith on his first nomination of his career. I am putting this one in A. I really do like this whole sports movie idea. It's very interesting because King Richard was my number one in terms of the picture nominees for 2021. Oddly enough, even though that was obviously that movie lost its reputation because of what happened in the Oscars, but this is a great first nomination for Will Smith as Muhammad Ali, and obviously looking at the fantastic sports movie and just how dealing with obviously what he's doing with as not just a professional boxer but also with during the time period of the civil rights movement and his I don't remember they go into his Muslim rights or something like that. I don't remember. I know I think it's a bit in One Night in Miami, but I'm not really sure, but it's primarily focusing on his boxing career, and it's very interesting that we have like two other boxing movies, actually a couple of other like boxing or wrestling sports movies that were in the bottom of the eight categories. Man, there's a lot to talk about, but yeah, this is a fantastic. I would say it does go a little bit slow, I think, towards its second half, and John Voight's scenes were not that interesting, I would say, but just seeing the performance that Muhammad Ali does throughout his career to where he was, it's just really fantastic. Will Smith definitely gave a great first nomination for his performance in the movies. Now we're into our first non English film in this tier list, and that is Jean Pierre Jeunet's Amelie, which its highest nomination was for original screenplay, and it earned a couple of nominations in the technical categories, but oddly enough, it lost the Best International Feature Award for France. Um, and that's very interesting because that also happened a little bit later with Amelia Paris, where it was the front runner but ended up losing as it lost to Bosnia and Herzegovina's No Man's Land, which that will be more in discussion in the international one. But I will be able to talk about Amelie here. I'm also going to put this one in A. It's a unique romance story of the fantasy that our main character goes through and also throughout her journey. It's been over, I think, a year or so since I've seen it, but what I remembered, it was a fantastic journey. It does go a bit slow, a bit. Actually, I'm going to put this in B. Instead of A, I'm going to put it in B because I do think the beginning portion did kind of go a bit slow, but I really do enjoy Audrey Tauto's performance and the whole journey when it got a little bit better towards its second half with the pacing. It really did well. The production design was fantastic. shots were incredible. It's just Audrey Tauto's performance was just fantastic. She definitely would have been a great Best Actress nomination. She did got in at BAFTA, and I believe the BAFTAs really took to Amelie, including in for picture, and I believe Jean-Pierre Deschanel did got in for director, and I believe it won original screenplay. Oddly, it lost the film not in the English language category to Amoros Parlos, Inarritu's Alejandro Gonzalez Inarritu's debut feature, which is not on this tier list. But it's pretty unique to see this movie did so well, and it's kind of interesting that if it was nominated for Best Picture, it definitely would have won the international Oscar no matter what. Next up is one of Ridley Scott's follow-ups to Gladiator, because he also did Hannibal that same year. But we're not talking about that infamous sequel to The Silence of the Lambs, which I've not seen. This is obviously the Somalian war movie Black Hawk Down, which its highest nomination it earned was for Ridley Scott getting another Best Director nomination. Most likely because since he didn't win last year for Gladiator, I think they decided to give him another nomination. But it did win 2 Oscars in the text for sound mixing and film editing. I'm going to have to put this in E, though. Like Wonder Boys, I don't remember much of this film. I don't know why it just did that. Going the typo there in the tier list there. But I don't remember much about Black Hawk Down. It's just like, all I just remember is just like, I think like just the helicopters and the wars. Like, I don't remember much of the battles. It's just like a very forgetful war movie. I just don't remember anything about the film, like, or the performances, or the script, or anything like that. Now, this is, like, one of the smaller wars that occurred in the 90s, because this was a battle between, a Somalian nation and the United Nations, specifically with the U.S., Malaysia, and Pakistan. I'm just looking at it's, like, kind of in, Mogadishu, is that in, just looking this up right now, in Somalia. So yeah, it's a small country. It's just kind of like I don't remember anything about this movie like Wonder Boys. I just don't have a fond memory of it. Now we're into Bridget Jones's Diary. Obviously, a very famous British character that is played by an American actress. Yeah, that's just it's just so odd. So you say that. So we get a lot of British actors portraying a lot of real life American people, yet this is an American actress playing in a British role when you could have got an actual British person to do it. I don't know if this was intentional by the author of the book or something like that, or just like the Sharon Maguire, the director, or stuff like that, or like I don't really know. I'm gonna put Bridget Jones's Diary a D on this one. I will admit, this is very interesting. I actually ended up liking the sequels after this film. I ended up liking The Edge of Reason a lot more than a lot of people did, even though a lot of people hated that one. And Bridget Jones's Baby is really underrated. I've not seen the TV movie Mad About a Boy, which I don't know why it's going the television side, which would have been make more sense to go into the theaters, but it went straight to Peacock, so oh well. I'll probably get that sometime soon. Maybe a watch, even though it's not really much of a requirement compared to the other two. Because they got the actual, Mad About a Boy. Kind of did, but primarily on streaming. I will admit I was thrown a bit off by Zellweger's accent, what she did with Bridget Jones. But I just think the romance plot, at least with this romance between, obviously, Mark Darcy, which is Colin Firth's character, and who's Hugh Grant's character again? I know what was his name. I forget who, but like Daniel. It's just like it's like a between. She goes with the lawyer that is almost that is kind of more calm and subtle, or does she go with what was her boss? And just gives all the sex she wants. It's just like kind of confusing, and obviously the relationship between these two men is just unique. That it obviously goes into this kind of massive ending Christmas scenario, stuff like that. It's kind of a Christmas movie, if you can say so, at the least, if you go by the third act. It is interesting to see how big this ensemble cast is, because Jim Broadbent's in this, and oh my gosh, Broadbent had a big 2001, to say the least. He was in this. We'll talk about his winning performance in another film, and he was in Moulin Rouge. What was he also in 2001? Like, I know he was in the Harry Potter series, but I don't think it wasn't in the first one yet, but and obviously he was in the Paddington movies. I do like yeah, all three of the movies he was in. Oh man, what a year Jim Broadbent had. It's not her playing him playing Bridget's father is not really that showy enough because obviously it's primarily focused on Bridget and her relationships. It just I think it worked better a lot in the sequels. Even though I've not like I said I've not seen the fourth one, but the follow ups after Diary, I just think it just kind of like maybe I think it's the Weinstein presence. I would say, that could be the thing because this was a Miramax Weinstein movie, so that's kind of hard to say about that. So yeah, there are a couple Weinstein Miramax movies we have to go through, and even some Weinstein films around until 2015, I would say. So yeah, this is one of like it got a Best Actress nomination for Renee Zellweger. I don't think this would have been the one I would have gone with. Now into another coming of age movie, Ghost World, from Terry Swigov, who directed the documentary Crumb. I believe this is his first narrative feature, starring Thora Birch, a young Scarlett Johansson, and Steve Buscemi, who was pretty close to getting a supporting actor nomination, because I think he got both a Globe and a Spirit nomination for it. And also with him starring in Monsters Incorporated that same year, he did had a decent 2001. I'm gonna put this one in E as well. I don't hate it. Unlike the other two, I just didn't really like this movie as much. It's just the weird relationship that our main character, who is played by Thora, has with Buscemi's character, and then obviously the relationship, her friendship with her best friend, which is Johansson's character. It's just like, and it's just our main character just makes some weird decisions, especially with an infamous painting that she decided to choose for her art display at the art show, and it's just like what was she thinking? Especially with this kind of like not really creepy old man. It's just like it's just so weird. I don't know where Terry Swigoff and Daniel Close, who also co-wrote the script with Swigoff, were thinking in this film. It's just like it's not. It didn't piss me off like Requiem for a Dream, but it's just like I just didn't really like this movie. Yeah, so I don't understand why Ghost War got that adapted screenplay nomination. And now we come to I Am Sam, which was nominated for Best Actor for Sean Penn. Yeah, I might have felt offended by this film. It's not as offended as Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close. I will give it that, but that's just not a great portrayal of autism either from Sean Penn. Even though it's not said in the movie, but it's just yeah, it's not good. It's bad. It's pretty bad. A bad portrayal. Although there are some decent performances from Dakota Fanning and Michelle Pfeiffer, but no, this movie just kind of sucks. Although you do have some real life adult disability actors in this movie as well as like Sam's close friends, but it's just kind of embarrassing. It's just like this trial of trying to protect his daughter from everything, and it's just like, granted, the ending was great, but it's just the whole trial and stuff like that. And it's very odd that one of the cast members of this movie is Richard Schiff, who is a person who is playing a prosecutor that is against autism, and then he would now play a person in The Good Doctor where he supports a person with autism with Dr. Sean Murphy. That's just so very odd when I saw it. It's like, what's Richard Schiff doing in this movie? And then obviously he would do something better in a better portrayal as Dr. Glassman in The Good Doctor, but even though Freddie Highmore's portrayal of autism is not that perfect either, but I do feel a lot more supportive with a lot of the supporting characters on that show. But yeah, this movie kind of sucks. It does get a little bit better when it comes to like the third act of obviously with Sam's relationship with his actual daughter, but it's just like yeah, it's kind of a bad movie. Yeah, definitely, obviously one of the worst Oscar nominations for an acting one, and easily with the 2000s. And I think everyone would have to agree with me. That's not a great portrayal of autism. I would probably go back to it over Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close any day because Oscar is more of annoying compared to Sam, but that's just only because of the third act what Sam does. So I do think that kind of prevents it away from being, and also all the scenes where he's just interacting with one character, with Michelle Pfeiffer as his lawyer. Um, yeah, it's just like I just don't think this is not really a great movie in general. Now we're into Iris, which played decent in the acting categories, getting Best Actress for Judi Dench, Supporting Actress for Kate Winslet, and a win for Supporting Actor for Jim Broadbent in his lead performance. Yeah, I'm gonna put this one in E. This is a very forgetful movie, even though this is an interesting portrayal of dementia and Alzheimer's. But yeah, it just like I just don't. Even though this is a real life biopic story, but I just don't have a. It's just kind of bland. It's just there's nothing really going on. At least with the father, at least the direction did had a creative way to doing it, of adapting with Florian Zeller adapting his play. But when it comes to Iris with the direction here, there's just like nothing much. Even with the back scenes with Winslet's character, it's just like it's not giving like vibes of another movie like with The Wife, for an example. But at least that has a more of a different subject matter compared to Iris's. That would be a very interesting if Iris and The Wife, a comparison between the two films. Even though Iris is a biopic film, but yeah, this is kind of another like bland Oscar bait Weinstein movie. Of course, yeah, it just like Broadbent did not needed that best supporting actor win. I mean, if it was for Moulin Rouge, maybe I would have been fine with it. And the fact that it's another lead performance and went supporting in one, yeah, that's a no. All right, this one is probably going to be the one that I think I'm going to get a lot of outrage a bit about this one, and that is Memento, from Christopher Nolan. Although I got it with some of his films like Following, I thought Oppenheimer was just okay, and then Dunkirk was obviously the one, and the Dark Knight trilogy, but like Interstellar, but a lot of people are not going to like this. It's not that bad, but Memento's going into E. I just don't get the whole in this with this particular style for Nolan's filmmaking. I get it with Dunkirk. I got it with Oppenheimer and Following, but I just think it did not work with Memento. I just didn't think it didn't work that well. I finally would understand it, but I still don't to this day. I think the best thing about the movie is Carrie Ann Moss. She did a fantastic performance in the film, but I just don't think the rest of the movie, not even like Guy Pearce or Nolan's, like obviously this got an original screenplay nomination for Christopher and Jonathan Nolan, but I just don't think this is not a very confusing movie to say the least. It's not terrible. Um, I would even probably go back to maybe the third act of maybe Interstellar. Maybe I'm not sure, but both of the movies are kind of on par with each other. So I haven't seen Insomnia, so I can't really say about that, or The Prestige, so I can't really say about those two. But just when it comes to Memento, I kind of find it a bit overrated. It's just kind of a confusing movie to me. Now we come into Monsters Ball by Mark Forster, who obviously would direct Finding Neverland, Quantum of Solace, Christopher Robin, of course, and the potential Thomas and Friends movie. Um, and this one got nominated for original screenplay and won Best Actress for Halle Berry, which of course was a pretty historic because she became the first woman of color to win the Best Leading Actress category. And I'm gonna put Monsters Ball in. I'm actually gonna put this in S. I really did enjoy Monsters Ball. I just even got the Blu-ray, I think, also from one of the two sales this year. Really fantastic movie of the connection of the relationship between both Halle Berry and Billy Bob Thornton's characters. And Billy Bob Thornton definitely should have gotten a Best Actor nomination. I've yet to see The Man Who Wasn't There from the Coen brothers. I will be able to watch that soon since it was announced in the Criterion lineup. But this is Billy Bob Thornton definitely should have got a Best Actor nomination in this because the connection of these two and what Billy Bob Thornton's character has to learn of what has happened, of going from being like somewhat of a racist to actually caring about somebody, a woman of color. He just really has to change that. And the script by Milo Idiko and Will Rokups, I think they should have won original screenplay. I think the script was fantastic in that. Halle Berry did deserve the Best Actress win, even though her career went into a massive downfall after that. i.e., Catwoman, of course. Even though I've not seen that one, but yeah. But this is a fantastic movie. I probably might say I like this more so than Finding Neverland. So I am very curious of what Mark, if that Mark Forster Thomas movie would ever come out. I'm not really sure because we have not heard anything about it. But this is definitely one of his best films. Like, yeah, he has a very odd filmography, but obviously, and even Lee Daniels, who would later on direct films like Precious and another movie we'll talk about in the 2020s. He produced this film, and yeah, very great job on the entire direction, but specifically the performances and the writing really made this movie really probably one of Mark Forster's best films in his interesting filmography. All right, now we come to Mulholland Drive from David Lynch, which is the last film to date to be the only movie to receive a Best Director nomination and nothing else. And the second time that ever happened for Lynch, as it happened with Blue Velvet in the 80s. So, and I know it's very hot to talk about this movie since we just lost him right at the beginning of this year. Um, I'm a little bit going to be kind of controversial, but I think some people are going to agree with me, and some people, especially Brian Rowe, the awards contender, is going to disagree with me on this one. I have to put this in D. I'll be honest, I am very hit or miss with David Lynch. I love Blue Velvet. I thought The Elephant Man was just okay. This was actually my first David Lynch movie. I just don't understand what's going on. Like, I kind of get it, but it's like between the connection between Naomi Watts and Laura Harring's characters, I just don't know what this movie's kind of is. Is this supposed to be a lesbian style movie? Is this supposed to be like somebody taking somebody's position away from her, or seducing old men? I don't get it. Like, I understand. Like, I'm not the only person that is also not really big on Mulholland Drive, and I just don't understand it. Like, I just don't. And I know some people in the comments are going to probably understand me, but there are going to be probably people are going to agree with me. It's just like Memento. It's just absolutely confusing. And I saw this like the beginning of this decade. Like, this was like one of the first movies in the Criterions I was watching, and I just like, thank goodness I didn't get the Blu-ray for this, but it's just like I just don't understand this film. Like, if I'm correct, was also one of the first films to go upgraded to 4K, if I'm not mistaken. But I just don't, I just don't understand this movie. I just don't. Even though it's sad that he's gone, but I just find this movie to be very overrated. I'm sorry. Next up is The Royal Tenenbaums from Wes Anderson. This was the first time the Oscars recognized him, as he and Owen Wilson were nominated for original screenplay. And yes, Owen Wilson was nominated for an Oscar for writing, not for acting. I'm gonna put The Royal Tenenbaums in an A. This is definitely one of the better Wes Anderson movies. Very fantastic story of having three grown adult children, two biological and one adopted, all coming into the house with their own issues, but specifically the main Richard Tenenbaum from Gene Hackman, obviously, who is unfortunately gone. Massive. That was a massive tragic death, of what we heard. That was very unfortunate. But this was obviously one of his last movie roles. Although I'm not really 100% positive on this. I heard there has been some. I'm not sure. This is just based on YouTube's that Hackman did not have a great time working on this film, even though he did win the Golden Globe for Best Actor in a Motion Picture, Musical, or Comedy for this. Um, but it is a fantastic role he has done. Even though I'm not really sure what happened in the production of this. But the rest of the ensemble is cast. Some of them are pretty good, like Luke Wilson, Owen Wilson's brother, and Gwyneth Paltrow. Very fantastic performance from him, and one of the very underrated Ben Stiller performances. And yes, Ben Stiller is actually in this movie, and this is like one of his most overlooked movies of his filmography. Like, a lot of people know him like films like Night at the Museum and Dodgeball and other comedies and stuff like that. But this is definitely one of his most underrated films, like in his filmography, that a lot of people kind of overlook because he's just playing a father of two twins. Of no, I don't think twins, of two boys that are kind of very sportish, or something like that, or more like exercise and stuff like that, and the one who really didn't care much about his father the most. And then once they reconnect, it kind of really the relationship he has with all of his three kids, especially with Stiller's kid, is pretty unique. And obviously, the whole scenario of him trying to having a fake cancer story in order for him to kind of be close to his kids, and it's just very interesting. And obviously, how the relationship goes between him, his soon-to-be ex-wife, and obviously with all of his kids, and how each of the cast members really had something, especially with all their individual plot points going on at the same time, including the relationship between Luke Wilson and Gwyneth Paltrow's character. Next up is Jonathan Glazer's Sexy Beast, which got a Best Supporting Actor nomination for Ben Kingsley. I have to put this in E. I just don't know what this movie was. Unlike with Memento and Mulholland Drive, where it's just a bit confusing, there are at least some decent moments, scenes I do remember. But Sexy Beast, I just don't. I think this makes it more confusing compared to Memento and Mulholland Drive. It's just like I just don't know where it's going. It's kind of like it's almost kind of like giving me remembering of like in a movie that we'll talk about a little bit later on that did it better with a history of violence. But when it comes to Sexy Beast, it just didn't work that well, and it's just like with the whole scenario with all the characters around our main one, it's just like I don't know where to go with. It's just like very forgetful. I just don't like Ben Kingsley's character is just like what William Hurt's character would be in a history of like I can almost see people would compare Sexy Beast and a history of violence. That could be a unique versus between the two films, like Memento and Mulholland Drive, I could say. So yeah, a lot of movie comparison to a lot of these movies that would do better a little bit later on. So yeah, Sexy Beast just not a thing for me. And I think I did put it in an F instead of E, but it is F, I would say. All right, let's talk about our first animated film in this tier ranking in general, which is Shrek, which was, of course, our first winner in the animated feature category, but it was the first animated film to be nominated in adapted screenplay. The first animated film nominated screenplay in general was Toy Story. And obviously, Shrek was a big hit in 2001. We, of course, just got the Shrek's Onion Carriage Balloon in the Macy's Parade. And obviously Shrek 5 will be coming in about another 2 years or so, since I know it got delayed to, I think, the summer of 2027, I believe. So, yeah. Here's an interesting story about with my connection with the first Shrek film. I did not like it when I was a kid. But then when I revisited the film back in this decade, I actually ended up liking it a lot more than it did. I'm going to put this in B, but a very B plus average, I would say. Um, the thing about it is, actually, no, I'm putting this in A. I'm putting this in A, but it would be like an A minus. Yeah, I really do like the whole now the story of the connection, how Shrek and Fiona's relationship would become. Now understanding it more as an adult, and Shrek's friendship with Donkey, and the whole journey they have to go through is pretty unique. The relationship, like it's kind of like not really like a road to comedy, but just like a journey throughout, like what's in the journey between Shrek and Fiona and Donkey throughout before they go to the castle to before they reach to Lord Farquaad Duloc specifically, and obviously Fiona's big massive secret of her being an ogre, of course. And obviously, it's just like, yeah, obviously there's a lot of Disney jokes in this, of course, because this is Jeffrey Katzenberg's big middle finger to Michael Eisner and the entire Disney company, because there's a whole animation story about that if you know your history about the Disney company or throughout a little bit of DreamWorks' history, or specifically Jeffrey Katzenberg's history. But Shrek was the big deal, of course. But I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to talk about, of course, the movie. Yeah, obviously the animation, obviously very dated, of course, but still great as it was in the 2000s. Even though some of the human designs, even though Lord Farquaad is modeled after Michael Eisner, but John Lithgow's performance really kind of does it great. One thing to note about Shrek throughout the awards season is that it is the first and only animated film so far to receive a BAFTA nomination for Best Picture. Yes, the BAFTAs probably took to Shrek more so than the Oscars by giving it a Best Picture nomination. It won Adapted Screenplay over A Beautiful Mind, and Eddie Murphy got a Best Supporting Actor nomination for his performance as Donkey. Yes, the only voice performance to ever do so at the BAFTAs. I don't know if they changed the rules or not after that, but that's amazing. So yeah, and obviously Shrek would be the inaugural winner for animated feature, and definitely a deserving one, of course. Even though Monsters Incorporated is definitely a very close second. But yeah, it got that adapted screenplay nomination. I would have given A Beautiful Mind that pick, but Shrek definitely would have been a good no in the bedroom, excuse me. But Shrek definitely would have been in my list on that. So yeah, definitely a great one. And last for 2001 is Training Day, which was nominated for Best Supporting Actor for Ethan Hawke in his lead performance, and infamously winning Best Actor for Denzel Washington after Russell Crowe made a controversial speech at the BAFTAs after he won for A Beautiful Mind, which prevented him to losing that Oscar two times in a row to Denzel getting his second and first win in leading and become the second colored actor to win the Best Leading Actor category after Sidney Poitier. And that was actually a pretty historic moment of that ceremony, with not just with Halle Berry and Denzel winning the leading categories, but Sidney Poitier received an honorary Oscar that night. And that's definitely a amazing Oscar moment in general, from a ceremony highlight, especially with Denzel becoming the second person to win colored male to win after his idol Sidney Poitier, and he presented Poitier the honorary at that ceremony with the honorary Oscars at the time when they had the honorary Oscars at the main ceremony, and that was a pretty historic moment. In terms of the movie, I'm gonna have to give this one, I think, a D, because it's not terrible, I would say. It's just, I think, was kind of a disappointment. It's just like this buddy off, like, undercover cop duty. It's just like it kind of seems to work, but then it kind of goes into this like massive revenge scenario with Hawk's character had to deal with Denzel of what the bad stuff they were actually doing. It's just like it doesn't kind of go in a way. I didn't think I would have definitely would have given Russell Crowe the best actor despite of that speech. I would have still voted for Russell Crowe. I just didn't really get to the movie. You feel more sympathetic with Hawk's character, and Denzel's villain is just like I don't know what to deal with. It's just like it's just like kind of a racial thing. It's just like with all the other, I think, Hispanics, it's like kind of very forgetful. Yeah, I'm actually gonna switch that. I'm gonna actually switch it to E on this one, not a D. Yeah, I just think it's just like there's a lot of things going on. It's just like I don't really know. It's not terrible like the others. It's just I just didn't really like this movie. Now we're into 2002, and we begin this up with About a Boy from, I think it's Peter Hedges, and it earned an adapted screenplay nomination for Hedges along with Chris Weitz and Paul Weitz. And I am actually going to give this one an A. I really like this story of how this single man is dealing with the situation with this kid who comes on as like almost like a proper father figure to him, even though it doesn't, like this unique friendship these two have with his situation single mother, who is another American actress playing a British person with Toni Collette. I mean, first Zellweger is Bridget Jones, and now Toni Collette plays a British mother. That's just weird casting, I would say. At least with Zellweger's Bridget Jones, at least her character gets better in the sequels. But when it comes to Collette as the mother in this, that's just miscasting, I would say. But Hugh Grant definitely could have been a great Best Actor nomination on this. He really had to stand out, and a very young Nicholas Hoult was fantastic. And the different situation he comes in from being like a kind of a kid who's bullied to trying to become a very cool one. And although he has to have a lot of respect for his mother, even though it does come in a weird scenario, and obviously with Grant's character going through many different relationship status through many characters, especially with Rachel Weisz's character, I believe, like very like one of her very early roles. And then all the situations is, I know there was a TV series that ran for 2 seasons that was kind of a adaptation of this movie. I've seen snippets of it, but I'm not really sure if I would go into it, except for like maybe the little romance plot with the main kid and obviously the girl he's kind of following, which is kind of based on it. I heard that's a bit on the second season of the show. But yeah, this movie is really fantastic. Definitely a fantastic performance, with the exception of the miscasting of Tony Collette. Its adapted screenplay nomination, really, definitely a pretty good one. Now it's about Schmidt from Alexander Payne. This was I think, his follow up to Election, where it's basically about Jack Nicholson's character going to I believe, his daughter's wedding, um, as soon as after he just lost his wife. And obviously the situation that I think it's Schmidt, that is, I believe, his name, or that's the last name, but it's basically like a kind of like a little road trip journey for him going to his house and going to try to go and see his daughter's wedding, even though his daughter is not happy about probably the wedding decisions and almost feels like might ruin it. I'm gonna give this one a B. Jack Nicholson is pretty fantastic in this, and this was his final Oscar nomination. And definitely probably a great send off. He almost won this between him and Daniel Day Lewis before the unexpected upset with Adrian Brody, out of nowhere win, by the way. Kathy Bates is pretty good in her scene. She did got a supporting actress nomination. It didn't get adapted screenplay, and oddly, it won screenplay at the Globes, and it didn't get that Oscar nomination, which definitely would have been a better nomination than either Chicago or The Hours, I would say. Yeah, yeah, but I do like this whole kind of road trip of him also reminiscing about his childhood times, and almost like going into a tire shop of telling that this area before it was his childhood home, and just kind of reminiscing about it, and just getting to see, like, obviously having a time with, I think, some RV stuff, like going to this like RV place, and then I think something kind of goes wrong, I believe, but he ends up definitely having kind of a great time, even though there are some situations him now as a widowed man. So, but trying to also reminisce with his daughter is also pretty heartwarming as well. Next up is Adaptation from Spike Jonze, written by Charlie Kaufman and the fictional Donald Kaufman, one of the only fictitious people that was ever nominated the Oscars, as it was up for adapted screenplay, which won at the BAFTAs. Won and got uh, three acting nominations: for supporting actress for Meryl Streep, which she won at the Golden Globes, uh, actor for Nicolas Cage, which was his second nomination after his win for Leaving Las Vegas, and probably the last nomination he had before he had a bit of a career downfall, before he had a bit of a rise in momentum with films such as like Pig and Dream Scenario of this decade. He might get soon a comeback nomination, probably soon, when he finds the right movie. And won Best Supporting Actor for Chris Cooper, which is oddly enough his only Oscar nomination. That's very interesting, to say the least. I'm gonna put this one in. I'm gonna put this one in A as well, because it's just an interesting scenario of hearing the story that when Charlie Kaufman was writing this movie, he did not know what to do of adapting The Orchid Thief, and the way he decided to do this story of having him have a fictional version of himself with a fictitious twin, and then going elements of The Orchid Thief and Susan Orleaf's relationship with the person that she wrote about. It's just pretty unique in style. It's just so kind of very funny. Even though Chris Cooper, I think his performance wasn't a standout compared to Nicolas Cage, who is fantastic as both the Charlie and the Donald, where the Donald is so enthusiastic and the Charlie is the one who's in the crisis as the writer. So that was pretty fantastic, well done, not just from Spike Jonze, but Charlie Kaufman as well. This is definitely one of the positivities of Charlie Kaufman, I would say, because I'll probably talk a little bit about that when I get to Anomalisa. But this is definitely, and another movie he is involved with in the animated one, but another movie in this one we'll get into when we get to 2004. Now we're into Catch Me If You Can from Steven Spielberg, which in today's standards would have got a lot more nominations than it did, because it only got in for original score, and its highest was supporting actor for Christopher Walken. Like, if the Oscars were today, it definitely would have gotten in for picture, maybe directing for Spielberg, best actor for Leonardo DiCaprio, and adapted screenplay. I am putting this one in S. This is a fantastic Spielberg movie. Really should have got a lot more recognition than it should have had. A fantastic, like, kind of cross country kind of like road trip like crime thriller movie of trying to catch Frank. I know what his last name is, but I don't know how to pronounce it. And obviously, the real life Frank Abagnale, I believe that is, would appear on the game show to tell the truth, which very funny in the credits. They actually recreated Frank Abagnale's appearance on the show with obviously with the real life footage from the show, but with all the fictitious Franks um, in the actual scene. So that was a fantastic recreation of that scene. DiCaprio's fantastic in that. That in Gangs of New York, he really had a fantastic 2002. I would go with Catch Me If You Can over Gangs of New York, but he did have a fantastic best leading performance that year. Tom Hanks is fine in this, but I really love the whole journey of going from where he ends up being at the end. It's just like all the relationship he deals with, all the lies he had to deal with. It's just like, man, what a fun movie it is. Just finding out this real life story of what this man did in real life. Wow. Yeah, it definitely should have got a lot more praise than just Christopher Walken's performance, which and the score. Now we're into Far From Heaven from Todd Haynes, which earned an original screenplay nomination, which is Todd Haynes' only Oscar nomination to date. Best Actress for Julianne Moore, and I believe 2 technical nominations. I know one of them was score. I think the other was it costume design or production design. I don't know which one it was, but yeah, this definitely probably would have gotten in a Best Picture nomination if there were 10 nominees, and easily the superior Julianne Moore performance over The Hours, without a doubt. Even though I didn't like her performance in The Hours, but yeah, she would have been my pick for Best Actress. I'm putting this one in A. Although I know this is kind of probably be another movie that might not age well, a racial movie directed by a white person where you focus on a white protagonist. But obviously there is a serious situation, of course, not because with her relationship with specifically with this the black person that she's been really kind of falling for, played by Dennis Haysbert, who you may know him from the late Allstate commercials throughout the late 2000s, I think early 2010s, who gave a fantastic performance. But mainly specifically with the situation of, and also with all the rumors going on that they might be in love, but also with her husband, played by Dennis Quaid, who's secretly gay, and this is like segregation Jim Crow laws like 50s time. Now, obviously, I'm very curious if Viola Davis, who plays a maid in this movie, I wonder if she regrets doing Far From Heaven. I know she does with the help, but I wonder if she regrets doing Far From Heaven, even though this primarily stars a white person with Julianne Moore, but you get the situation where she's dealing with because finding out her husband's gay, and now she has to deal with a lot of people not liking her because of her probably falling in love with this black man on a segregated place. Yeah, it is very racist, of course, obviously. Um, so it is kind of very difficult to watch. Obviously, when it comes to movies, especially racial movies, throughout that time with hearing white people saying the N word, it's just always not that very uncomfortable, of course, to watch that. Um, it is well done, especially the secret situation of her husband being gay. Another serious issue, of course, that was going on at the time. Not very going on at the time, but very secretly. That would have been a massive debate, like at the time, if this movie was a true story or not. But it obviously wasn't. But yeah, Todd Haynes definitely did a good job writing this. Julianne Moore definitely should have won Best Actress, not for the movie she did won, which we'll talk about in part 3 of this tier list. Next up is Frida. And a lot of people, this movie has gotten a little bit more controversial because of Weinstein's sexual harassment in the production of this movie from Salma Hayek. Oh boy, it is. Yeah, yeah. I do understand that I don't know if she regrets doing this movie or not. But I actually really didn't like this movie a lot more, and I am putting this one in S. I'm sorry. I really did really like this movie of understanding who Frida was as a avid painter and just the relationship he had with Alfred Molina's character, and obviously with her physical disability she had, and how fantastic of an artist she is. It's just like kind of like I talk about with Pollock of how seeing the use of art as a form as the main subject in a movie is just something that really stood out to me, and just the continuation of how also real life of understanding who Frida was in real life. Even though I've not seen like the documentary, I think that came out last year, I believe. I've not seen that one, so I can't really say. But yeah, this is kind of a really fantastic movie. The way how it was directed, and the way how the story was told. Salma Hayek does give a great performance, and as well as Alfred Molina, by the way, very underrated in this film. Very overlooked. He should have got a lot more recognition. I know he went supporting, but I think he's technically a lead in this movie, so that's where I would have stand. But yeah, I know Hayek might be regretting this movie because of Weinstein, of course, and really feel sorry for her. Yeah, even though I do understand it, but I really love this movie a lot more than a lot of people does. Even though it did got like a lot of nominations in the text, with Hayek getting Best Actress, it did win two for makeup and hairstyling and original score. I don't get it with the score, but definitely the makeup. But keep in mind, the makeup only had two nominees. It was just that film and The Time Machine. That was it. Now into My Big Fat Greek Wedding, the big romantic comedy, starring and written by Nia Vardalos, which got in for original screenplay. I'm gonna put this one in C. Um, I do get the scenario of this, especially going through of a guy who wants to marry a woman that he really soon loved, but have to follow the I think it's the Russian Orthodox tradition. I believe that's what the religion is. And obviously the relationship that she has to deal with her parents and stuff like that. It's been a while since I've seen it. Yeah, I've also seen the other two sequels, and they're not that good. No, they're not. Yeah, I just found the first one is okay at best. It's just like there's really like nothing much. It kind of does give it a little bit, I think, like the business side of her, but I just think I just don't know where else. I don't. It's been a while since I've seen the movie, so I don't remember much of it. But it was, but I do remember it was just fine. It wasn't terrible. It wasn't disappointing. It's just fine. It's just like there was like I I don't remember what I have to say about this. I might just have to go look up at some clips and try to remember what I remember about this movie probably after this video. Now into The Quiet American, which got a Best Actor nomination for Michael Caine, and this is actually another Miramax Weinstein movie that I didn't know about, and also stars Brendan Fraser in this. So yeah, he almost got close to an Oscar nomination before he won for a movie that we'll go into in the fifth part, of course. Um, I'm gonna put this one in D. I do get the scenario of where this movie is going with. It's just like basically Kane and Freight, a British. Even though I think Kane's playing an American or something like that, I don't know. But it's just like Kane's relationship with this younger woman, and then Fraser wants to have um the woman that Kane loves, and then the situation they were dealing with during I think a wartime period or something like that. I think it's in Vietnam, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think this is a I don't remember if this is true story or not, but it's just like I don't know where the whole scenario is. It's just like trying somebody like a jealous rival story, and that's just kind of basically it. What that movie is really about. So I don't think Kane, which this was his last Oscar nomination, I don't think this was kind of not necessary. I think Fraser even stood out more so than Michael Caine. I'll be honest, and even the woman actress who played the female role of what is supposedly this love triangle story. Hey, at least it has a better love triangle story than Pearl Harbor, I'll give it that. Next up is Road to Perdition, Sam Mendes' follow up to American Beauty. I'm gonna give this one a C. It is an interesting kind of scenario, like like Catch Me If You Can, where once again starring Tom Hanks, but also with a kid, trying to escape the gangster that of trying to preventing him to kill, which even though the mob's leader is played by Paul Newman, which was one of his final roles, and this was his final Oscar nomination, which I think he would have been my pick for Best Supporting Actor. Yeah, he would have been my pick for supporting actor because he kind of really stood out to the film. Hanks is pretty fine in this movie as well as the child actor, but like the whole situations they had to deal with, the whole survival thing, it is pretty good. It's just I think the dialogue just didn't work for it, and I think maybe it could have done a lot better in the beginning portion after when other than the main boy and Hanks's character, obviously with his wife and obviously their other kids were killed except for the main boy and obviously Hanks's character, and in order for them to try to survive from the gangster, because this was 20s, of course, and at the time, and even showing how the kid how to drive a car, of course, because this was actually a thing I think in the 20s when cars were starting to be a thing that kids at the time actually had the right to drive, but nowadays obviously it's now obviously requires by an age, of course. Obviously you start to be in, I know in the state of Pennsylvania you have to be 16 in order to start to drive. I didn't get my license until like 3 years later in 2019, so it took a bit, but I finally got to it. So yeah, driving's not that easy, but as soon as you get used to it, it's pretty subtle. Although you still have to kind of try to make sure you were going through the speed limit and make sure there's no cops around, or well, to make sure if there is cops around. Just saying, I don't know why I said no cops around. Sorry about that, but yeah, it's fine. There are some great scenes, but I did not like the ending. But there are some moments, including their moment in the farm with this farm wife and I think this farm husband, and then how they had a little fondness during the time when they were staying there for a bit. Next up is we're actually kind of going in the realms of Pedro Almodovar here with Talk to Her. And this is very ironic because Spain does have a bit of an interesting relationship with Pedro Almodovar when it comes to submitting his films because they don't always submit his films all the time. They have done some, but some of the times they either don't or they do. And either they do, it doesn't get shortlisted, and in some cases, they do get shortlisted, but don't, or actually don't get shortlisted, fail to get the nomination, and still gets nominated. Or in the case of scenario like Talk to Her, where it's not submitted, but still does well for its U.S. release that same year, and does well in the other categories. Like it was nominated for directing. Almodovar was nominated, of course, for directing, and he won for original screenplay. Now you got to remember the international category does not award the filmmakers. That's the country. So even though he did accept Spain's Oscar for All About My Mother, his win for Talk to Her for original screenplay is his only competitive Oscar win. And his only other Oscar nomination other than his win is for directing for Talk to Her. I am actually very hit or miss when it comes to Pedro Almodovar. I actually really did like three of his earlier films with Tie Me Up, Tie Me Down, Woman on the Verge of a Nervous Breakdown, and All About My Mother. In terms of the three films I've seen, which will actually get in, four of them, excuse me, three of them I'm not really fond of. So I'm kind of like with David Lynch. I'm very hit or miss, and the Coen brothers. I'm very hit and miss with Pedro Almodovar. I'm putting Talk to Her in D. I just it is a pretty interesting movie where they were going with having two blind women have this massive connection with from these doctors and stuff like that, but it just didn't really work well for me. I just like I kind of get it, but I just think it was either the writing, the dialogue, or was it the acting that just didn't stood out to me. It just like something was kind of missing in that I really did like about like his three older films and another movie that we'll get into in the next part. But it's just when it comes to this film and two of his other films we'll talk about in other parts, it's just not really that good, honestly. It's a little overrated. It's just like it's not fine. It's just like I would say disappointment levels for me in this one. That's the reason why I put it in D. I think it just could have worked a lot better if it had like better memorable characters instead. I think they were just all hating on each other. I think that was the big thing. Like the characters not really liking each other. Next up is Unfaithful, which earned a Best Actress nomination for Diane Lane, and this was the other film Richard Gere starred in this year, other than Chicago. And I am putting this one, although critics were mixed on it, I'm putting it in B. I really like this kind of thriller scenario of this wife kind of been a little bit more, a little bit on a secret affair with a younger man in, I believe, either in another apartment, and there's a unique relationship in how these two really have a little fun with. And then obviously the husband doesn't really get super jealous, but he does something interesting that really kind of goes in a little bit of a turn, and I can see why some critics are mixed with it, and I can see why that's a little bit issue. But Richard Gere does a phenomenal job performance on this film. It's not like I wouldn't say it's not like the jealous type, but it's a little bit like a little bit not super jealous, but a little bit more like if you take John Magaro's performance in Past Lives, but you up it a little bit more jealousy, but not extremely too jealousy that you would do something violently. And I see where his character was coming from. And Diane Lane does a pretty good job in her performance, but I think Richard Gere kind of stood out more so. I think he would have been a good nomination. Now, I know he was running for Chicago, but I think Unfaithful was his superior performance. And finally, for 2004, we go to Ito Mama Tabian, with I think it's called And Her Mother Too, but we do go by Ito Mama Tabian, including the Oscars did, from Alfonso Cuarón, which was nominated for original screenplay with his brother Carlos. And what is notable about this is one of the few non-English films that was allowed to qualify for its U.S. release after not being submitted by the country in its initial release in the previous year. So Mexico could have submitted this film in 2001, but they did not. And the movie got a US release in 2002, and it was actually allowed to qualify for it. This is not the first time it has happened. This, I believe, happened with My Life as a Dog from Lasse Hallström, Egeneske Holland's Europa Europa, Paulo Sorrentino's Il Divo, and another example, actually, also in the same year as Yutamaba Tabi and Spirited Away. Japan did not submit the film in 2001. It was allowed to qualify for its US release in 2002, and it won animated feature. Itumaba Tabian did the same thing. Mexico did not submit it for 2001, and it got nominated for original screenplay for Carlos and Alfonso for its 2002 US release. And obviously, this is a very NC-17 movie, if I'm not mistaken, one of the few NC-17 movies, and I do have this movie on my collection, of course. Um, a very young Gal Garcia Bernal and Diego Luna, and Maribel Verdú, man, so fucking attractive in this movie. Part of that French about that, or part of my Spanish, I would say, but even though it's not really, I would have said Spanish, not French, but yeah, she. Oh my gosh, I can see why many young men like would have want to have her. It would, depending around the age of where I was when I saw this movie. It was in 2020, so even though there's a lot of weird sexual moments, but oh man, this is a fun road trip movie between these three characters. I'm putting this one in A. I really had a fun time. There are some weird sexual moments, and yeah, I'm not really fond with nudity in in movies. It's just not really my thing. But it's just like, yeah, because there's a lot of sex. I prefer like a lot of the NC-17 moments in this film over the Wolf of Wall Street any day. But yeah, this was definitely one of the fun Alfonso Cuarón movies, one of his earlier films. But this is like a very fun road trip movie and going throughout most of Mexico's, and then all of them having like sex for one another. It's just, I might have spoiled a bit of the movie, a bit of the ending, but it is a pretty unique road trip, and Maribel Verdú definitely would have been a great Best Actress nomination. Now we're into 2003, and there's like 17 films. Jeez, that's a lot for 2003. I think that's probably the most that were just in the other 7 of the top 8 categories in that year. Because Lord of the Rings: The Return of the King only had, like, what, picture, director, screenplay. Lost in Translation had picture, director, actor, screenplay. Master Commander had picture and director. Mystic. Wait, Master Commander, yeah. Mystic River had picture, director, actor, supporting actress, and adapted screenplay. And Seabiscuit had picture and adapted screenplay. So, yeah, we got a lot here to be basically pretty precise for this unique lineup. Let's start this up with American Splendor, which got nominated for adapted screenplay. I'm putting this one in E as well. I don't have a fond like some of the other. I just don't understand this movie. Now I know this is a real life story, of course, of a famous comic book illustrator, especially who has basically almost just losing his voice. Like, as in, I'm a little bit worried about that because that almost feels like that could almost happen to many people in real life. Um, Even though I'm not a smoker or anything, or a vapor or anything like that, that's just kind of very bizarre. But I don't remember anything much about other than just Giamatti's performance, Paul Giamatti's performance, just basically almost losing his voice, and that's basically it. So let's go into our international feature winner of that year, The Barbarian Invasions from Canada, which one was nominated for original screenplay. Uh I'm gonna have to also put this one in E as well. The thing about it is, I just it's I don't know how to basically describe it other than just like visiting somebody in the hospital and like what talking about sex line, because this is obviously actually a sequel to an 80s movie called The Decline of the American Empire, and this is actually part of a Denis Arcand trilogy. The other one being Days of Darkness from 2007, which not the horror movie that came out that same year, but a different Days of Darkness. I'm unable to find that film, unfortunately. I did saw the first film first before that. I don't know what I thought about the first film, and I don't have any thoughts about this film either. And it's so ironic that this is the only legit sequel to have the pre-existing to actually be nominated original screenplay. And now I know Three Colors Red is, but the difference between the Barbarian Invasions and Three Colors Red, at least with Three Colors Red, the thing about it is with that sequel, none of the pre-existing characters from Blue and White don't make a massive appearance in the main plot. They just only make cameos. That's it. The Barbarian Invasions does have all the pre-existing characters from the first film, and yet it's put an original screenplay. If the Oscars were today, it definitely would have gone adapted, not original. So the only legit sequel to have its pre-existing characters be nominated in original screenplay. That's just kind of bizarre. That's the one thing that really stood out. What's another thing that actually stood out is City of God from Fernando Meirelles, which was the first notable film to actually, and probably the most notable film, to not be nominated for Best International Feature the previous year after it got the snubbed in that year because it was expected to win for Brazil, and yet it was allowed to qualify for its U.S. run the following year after its January 2003 release, and getting 4 Oscar nominations for directing for Fernando Meirelles and adapted screenplay in the top 8, along with cinematography and film editing. Really big, important ones. So if the Oscars were today, yeah, it definitely would have made it. I'm gonna give this one a C. Um, it is a pretty interesting coming of age and interesting real life kind of a story of this young boy who is like this young like teen or something like that that is really kind of has this kind of unique connection with this kind of Brazilian gangster and obviously with the relationships. And all he just wants to do is live, but he has to deal with these situations, including obviously doing photography is something that makes his particular gang very famous for. I forget what the real life one was because I know there are some fictitious characters in this film adaptation, of course. So, it is pretty unique, but all is just that our main kid wants to do is to live, and that's just kind of what he wants to do. Especially with the situations going on in his country during this specific time period. It's just there are not really a lot of memorable scenes that I can think of, other than like maybe the big, like a street, like a party, outdoor party scene, which probably is not good. Like contains a lot of flashing. So if you have epilepsy, I recommend you kind of really try to avoid much of it. And I think there might be a lot of flash photography in this game, but I'm not really sure. It's been a bit since I've seen this movie as well, but it's kind of fine. It's just like it is a pretty interesting story, but I think the acting kind of probably keeps it away from it, I believe. Now into Cold Mountain from Anthony Minghella, the man behind the Best Picture winner of 1996, The English Patient, and the '99 remake of The Talented Mr. Ripley. This is kind of another Weinstein Miramax movie, which got Best Actor for Jude Law and won Best Supporting Actress for Renee Zellweger, and then it only played in the tech categories. No adapted screenplay, not a post-win nomination for Best Actress for Nicole Kidman, not directing or picture. It would have made it in picture regardless of today's standards, if there were 10 nominees, of course. I know a lot of people just viewed this as Oscar bait, and I know Brian Rowe considers Renee Zellweger's supporting actress win the worst Oscars acting win of all time. The thing about it is, I ended up really liking this a lot more than a lot of people did, like Frida, and I'm putting this one in S. I really loved Cold Mountain. This just whole journey of how our main male protagonist has to do these regulations, of course, and also to get back to the woman he loved, which of course is Kidman's character, while Kidman has to deal with the situation around her town and the village with this rascal Zellweger performance, which I'm gonna be honest. I think it is Zellweger's best Oscar nomination, and I think it did deserve that supporting actress win. I think it is her best nomination, and probably my favorite performance I've seen from her. Basically, in terms of her for Oscar, all the Oscar nominated movies I think I've seen. Well, in all four of her nominations, yes. It is a very fantastic movie, well directed, well edited. The credit songs from Ons are pretty good as well. The cinematography is great. Kidman's fantastic. I would say if she didn't win last year for The Hour, she definitely would have been nominated for Cold Mountain. And she was great. Jude Law was pretty good as well. Like the main three characters are just really fantastic. The script is pretty good. I remembered having a great time watching this movie. It's a really great movie. I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me being showing it's a bland Weinstein Oscar bait movie, but I think this is one of those that I think did it right for me, like the reader. Sorry. Now we come to what I would say might be a bit of an underrated film from this year, The Cooler, starring William H. Macy, Maria Bello, and Alec Baldwin, which Baldwin got a Best Supporting Actor nomination for. So yeah, he did got an Oscar nomination for his career. For all your Thomas fans, if you're watching this video, I think this movie is rated R, I believe. So see this. I'm actually gonna put this one in S as well. I really do love this movie. The whole scenario of obviously this man who run like kind of is like the main administrator watching all the casino games while the main boss for the main boss just like looking at everything to make sure all the customers lose. And then when William H. Macy's character has this relationship with Maria Bello's character, that's when obviously the casinos become very successful with people winning, and Baldwin's character is just very pissed off about this, that the relationship is probably the big cause of this, and he wants to make sure that these two do not get together so his business can be good to get all the money. And it's just a very unique kind of almost like gangster style thing, I would also say a bit. But all three performances were fantastic. Yeah, it's odd William H. Macy or Maria Bello did not get nominated for their performances. The script was fantastic. The directing was really well done. Very underrated. I really wish this would have got a lot more recognition. I know Maria Bello got, I think, a supporting actress nomination at the Globes, but William H. Macy was overlooked that entire season. I mean, he was fantastic in this. Yes, he was going for Seabiscuit, like for the Golden Globes in supporting, but this would have been a good nomination for him in leading. Next up is Dirty Pretty Things, which got an original screenplay nomination for Stephen Knight. I knew him as the writer for a few of the next two movies that will be in the a movie in the 2020 retrospective. Dirty Pretty Things. I forget who the director of this, but this does star Chiwetel Ejiofor and Audrey Tautou, and even Sophie Okodenko and Benedict Wong are in this. Sergio Lopez is also in this pretty interesting cast list to say the least. And it's kind of basically about this hidden kind of scandal in this hotel, and was specifically the employees, I think, being some sort of an immigration issue in this British hotel, and it's a pretty interesting concept. But I'm gonna have to give it a D. I think it's just probably the performances just didn't really stood out to me. Like Tattoo, I think the main two from Tattoo and Elbow is fine, but I just think maybe like I think I might have seen a similar movie to this, but I'm not really sure. I don't. It's just like it feels something similar, and almost like felt like I don't remember they had a bit of a romance forcing thing in this movie. I'm not really sure, but yeah, it's just the script. Like, yeah, the story. I can see why it got that original screenplay nomination because the story does seem pretty interesting. But I think maybe if you want to go with something like definitely with a money issue scandal, I probably would prefer The Cooler over Dirty Pretty Things. Okay, this next one, it's a thing. It's a film called Finding Nemo, of course. Um, yeah, yeah, this one needs no explanation where that's going. I mean, this is not really based on nostalgic factors or childhood bias. Because I did grow up watching Finding Nemo, of course, as a kid on DVD. So, and I'm really been in more fond with, of course, specifically like when I was a kid, it was always like I had the collector's edition DVD, of course, and the second disc was the thing I went to, of course, when I was a kid. But when I got a little older, it was disc one, especially the audio-visual commentary, which I think is one of the best audio commentaries for a family movie in general. And I think that was a pretty creative one, and I know that I think you can see it. I think on some portions online, I believe, of some just the clips or just hearing the audio of the audio commentary. I think maybe it's also like I know it's somewhere online, but it is a fantastic audio commentary if you have not seen it because it just also seeing the visuals of how um clips of just how they made the movie of like and even showing storyboard deleted scenes. It's like a very fantastic presentation of how they did that. But in just in terms of the movie, of course, obviously this was nominated for one animated feature and was nominated for original screenplay. That's why it's in the top 8. I mean, I as somebody who grew up watching the who was born around the what is to be the golden era or now I would say the classic era of Pixar, I don't think I really need a lot of explanation about this Finding Nemo. I have a lot of nostalgicness for this film, even though many people not want to watch it because of Ellen DeGeneres as Dory now. So yeah, because she got canceled. So yeah, but really fond story of a father trying to find his son, and we also get, of course, obviously the son's perspective trying to get out of that dentist's office. So I'm very glad that obviously we got to see the perspectives of both Marlin and Nemo throughout their journeys of trying to actually do know that they do have to care about one another, of course. Especially after with Marlin with the opening scene with the Barracuda, probably like one of the most tragic openings in cinema for an animated film, to be precise. But you have to understand that because of what happened to Marlin after when Nemo was a little bit as a kid now, when after he was born. So, but you have to understand why Marlin's character's changed just because of that opening scene. But everything else, all the cast is from characters are very fundable. The tank gang is always awesome. I always, when I was a kid, I always just skipped to the tank gang scenes just because they were just fun to watch them just doing the dentist's office. But now, of course, older, I also get also the whole journey between Marlin and Dory on their way to P. Sherman 42 Wallaby Sydney. I couldn't resist saying that. But obviously to Sydney, Australia to get to that dentist's office. And obviously with the moments, and of course, that climax with the big fish net, of course, of how before like they just got reunited but they can't celebrate right away and then like there's a big conflict that has to come. Like I love when Pixar does that and with some of the endings. Of course, I think like Toy Story, the first Toy Story with the match, how the idea with the match with the car just driving it off, like trying to poke fun at the predictabilities and try to do something like that. Same thing with Toy Story 2 with the airplane scene and some other ideas, I think, in some other movies. But they know how to avoid predictabilities, and this is definitely one of the best ways to do that. But yeah, I don't want to go much into it because I have a lot of nostalgia. So I might say more if I didn't say what I had to say about the first in the animated in this video, if I might mention in the animated tier list. But yeah, that need no explanation where Finding Nemo was going. Not double S tier, but definitely yes. Next up is House of Sand and Fog, and this was a really great movie. I'm putting this one in A. I mean, the whole scenario of obviously this woman trying to get back her home after it was kind of technically she lost her house to it, even though she probably had not used it, but it was her and her dad's house for a long time, and dealing with the situation with this family from India that just immigrated to this, which of course mostly portrayed by Ben Kingsley and Shreya Aghdashloo, and then a massive situation of a secret that's kind of going on in the situation of what's going on, but it's like specifically with the family with some issues that had been going on with their situation. Not much on Connolly's character, but yeah, Jennifer Connelly is fantastic in this, and that just shows how big she was throughout the from 2000 through 2006. She had a lot of big notable Oscar nominated movies, like obviously got in for Ben Kingsley and Shreya Aghdashlu's performance and the score, but Jennifer Connelly should have gotten a Best Actress nomination. She was fantastic in this role. One very overlooked in the entire cast of the movie in terms of the award season throughout that award season. But yeah, just the whole thriller suspense of what will come into the climax, which I can't really reveal, but wow, it's just like, and obviously how the difficult situations, obviously they kind of understand where Connolly's character is coming from. Like she's not like a villainous role or something, but there's something else in the main side and trying to figure out how can she get her house back. But obviously there are some obvious reasons, and she said, "Don't do this, don't do this." But obviously, when the new family, of course, comes in from India, they just obviously can understand, especially with Shreya Aghdashlu's mini scene she has with Conley in the couch, and that was a pretty heartwarming one. Speaking of immigration, let's talk a little bit about In America from Jim Sheridan. I am putting this one in A as well. This is a really great movie of an Irish family coming to the United States in this, what is this crummy New York apartment. And obviously, the kids are like with two girls. It's just like it doesn't seem that easy for them. But once they get a little bit more connection, especially with Jaimon Hunsu's character, who is kind of like this artist and stuff like that, but has a serious health issue going on personally. Like he seems scary at first glance, but once the movie progresses, you get to understand it. And I can understand why he got that Best Supporting Actor nomination, as well as Samantha Morton in Best Actress, which I might say she might be supporting in this one because she was nominated for leading. Because Patty Constine and I forget who the one who played the eldest daughter, who is also the narrator of the film. I think she was the female lead and not Samantha Morton, I would say, but I can see maybe why. Yeah, and because I know the two girls who play the actual daughters in the movie are real life sisters in real life, and I think it's kind of loosely based on Jim Sheridan's life a bit because I know he, along with his daughters Kristen and Naomi Sheridan, did co-write the script with him. So, and this was the last time the Oscars did recognize Jim Sheridan because he did My Left Foot, The Story of Christy Brown, and In the Name of the Father, and then just In America. But I don't know what he did after that because he kind of faded off. I haven't looked up what he has done lately, but yeah, but Jim Sheridan definitely really had a good film here that really had a lot of Oscar favoritism. I think the carnival scene is one of my favorite scenes in the movie of this just trying to get a plushie or I think and then just the way how they celebrate the victory, and then obviously the Halloween scene when they kind of this Shimon Hunson's character when they finally interact with him, and how heartwarming the girls are to him. They are just like really, really, really well done. Now into an epic. We've got The Last Samurai, a fictitious Japanese tale, I would say, because it's focusing on an American person working with a Japanese sword army. I would say. I am from Edward Swick. This is gonna go. I'm gonna put this in S. This is a fantastic epic movie I saw. It got a supporting actor nomination for Ken Watanabe. I believe it got a film editing nomination. I think it did. I might be mistaken. I think it did, but I'm not sure. But yeah, Tom Cruise is fantastic and kind of just odd. He just got an honorary Oscar lately. Definitely would have been a good Best Actor candidate. Edward Swick's direction is fantastic. Like yeah, epic movies. Most of the time it doesn't work for me, but this is definitely on the positivity side. It's just like the whole practicing the build up. Cruise's relationship with this Japanese village in this village where who stays at, especially with this widow or single mother with two kids. It's just pretty unique how it goes and ultimately lead to the big climax. It's just a pretty epic film. I saw this on my living room TV, and it's just a very epic watch to see that on that screen. It was just pretty fantastic to see it. Well shot, well production design, great job in the costumes, really epic film. I don't know how many times I've said that, but it's a fantastic film. Definitely, really should have been a Best Picture nomination here, if especially if there were 10 fields. Next up is Monster, which is the biopic on one of the most notorious serial killers, uh, Alien Warnerers. I might mispronounce that if I get that incorrectly. And this is also the directorial debut of Patty Jenkins, who would later do Wonder Woman. A lot of people have massive fans for this movie. Not just many people say it's one of the best debuts of the 2000s, but people have said Charlize Theron's win is one of the best actress wins of all time, and even some say the best acting win of the 2000s. I'm gonna have to disagree on this. I'm gonna have to put Monster in D. Like the story is really good of understanding who this woman was, and also the relationship he had with this other girl played by Christina Ricci. Yeah, I did not know she was actually in. Christina Ricci was in this. I knew Theron was in it, but I did not know Christina Ricci was a co-star in this film. But it's just that I think it's either the performances or the. I think it might be more the dialogue that I think did not work for me on this film. It's just like it kind of goes into like two different ways in one. It's either like it's kind of an LGBTQ plus theme movie to a serial killer movie. It's just like it just seems like it just there's something missing in the story. Now, obviously, I think it's adapting some sort. No, it's an original script. That's right, not an adapted script. I kind of forget that sometimes biopic movies don't have source material they're using. Yeah, this was just solely written by Patty Jenkins. Bruce Dern's in this. I don't remember what he did in that film. But yeah, I just don't have any sort of a memory about the like other than obviously her being the famous serial killer and of course the relationship she would have with the girl that Christina Ricci plays. It's just that I think there's only one scene I think I remember. It's like I think her arrest outside of a motorcycle psycho bar. I believe. I think that's the only thing I remember. And maybe like obviously Theron's look is very very noticeable. She is very unrecognizable. That's huge credit to the makeup team making her look that like the real life serial killer. I will give credit to that. And it's odd it was shortlisted but did not get the makeup and hairstyling nomination. If that was nominated, I think that would have won over. Okay, no, wait, no, never mind. This was the Return of the King year, so never mind. So it definitely would have been nominated, but probably definitely would have been second place, or no, maybe no, maybe third. Like that's a good question. Like, would it have beaten the Return of the King or not? That's a good question because you had that Master and Commander and the Curse of the Black Pearl in that lineup. And we'll talk about that film in a few minutes. But yeah, I'm not really sure, but huge credit to the makeup team, the costume designers. I would say how kind of like realistic, how dirty some of the clothes actually were in that movie. That's another thing that really kind of stood out to me as well. But yeah, I know some people are gonna disagree with me on this, but although the concept seemed great, I just think either it was Patty Jenkins's dialogue that she wrote, or maybe some of the performances just didn't work out for me, or it was the casting decision. That could be another thing as well, but I'm not 100% sure because it has almost been a few months since I've seen the movie as well. But from what I remembered, it just like I was a little bit disappointed at it. Now we come into Pieces of a Woman, which earned a supporting actress nomination for Patricia Clarkson, and what could be almost the early look of what Felicity Huffman would be looking like in Transamerica. We'll talk about that film a little bit later on. Well, at least in the next part, of course. Um, one thing I want to mention here when I came to this, I think it's almost been almost over a year since I saw this. Believe it or not, this is actually a Thanksgiving movie. Yep, this is a legit Thanksgiving movie. So Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is not the only other Thanksgiving movie that is primarily the focus on. You could say Miracle on 34th Street, but then again, it was also primarily focused on Christmas, of course. But yeah, this is a legit true Thanksgiving movie where our main character, played by Katie Holmes, is doing her first ever Thanksgiving at her apartment. But it's kind of a bit of a failure because oh boy, she is not perfect with her like her cooking skills are not that well, not really cooking skills, but her appliances are not that great, and she tries to get so many neighbors to try to help her cook the turkey, but it just doesn't work well. And obviously, with all the neighbors she has, and she's just trying to get her stuff back, but it just like keeps going to massive failure, and all the neighbors they just don't really do much, even though there's like this um, African neighbors that, of course, help her a little at the beginning, and then there's this Asian family as well. I believe Chinese family. I believe that's what I think it is. If yeah, I think that's what it was. But and then obviously there's this one dude that just doesn't want like just keeps the turkey in the oven and just doesn't do anything and just keeps the door locked as a kind of a creep, I would say, while the rest of the family are traveling to her apartment at the same time with Patricia Clarkson's character, who is the mother, not also really not excited about her daughter, but more specifically, she is also battling some sort of cancer, which is why she is wearing a wig and would be almost like, I would say, the Felicity Huffman look in Transamerica. I am gonna give this one a C. It's fine. It like I do like the concept of having it be in another Thanksgiving movie. That's a pretty unique one, and having somebody that everyone's not that perfect when making their Thanksgiving meal, especially for the first time. And although I'll be honest, I am not a turkey guy. I just don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the way how my dad cooks it or not. It's just I think it's just always the I think it's always too dry for me. Not even the skin, I would say. I just don't know. It just even if it was cooked correctly or something like even having it breast side down, it just probably would not be the thing. So yeah, I'm not really a turkey guy in general. So um yeah, but it is kind of an understanding. It's like yeah, everything can go wrong on somebody's Thanksgiving Day, and it's just like sometimes it works well, but most of the times it doesn't. It's just that there is a lot of characters that are not really that memorable, and you kind of don't understand a little bit about um, why the mother is not really happy about doing this thing, and even though her father and I believe her sibling and her no, I think it's just her son, I believe, or I think there was another daughter. I'm not really 100% sure, but yeah, it's just kind of very unfortunate where the entire family is. But once it kind of goes to the ending, it's very somber and sweet. But yeah, it's fine. It's just like I think there are some scenes that I really did not like, especially some other characters I really didn't like, especially that one creep. Even though it's not really a creep on her, but more specifically just locking the door and not letting her get her turkey back. That's just kind of pure mean. Yo ho, yo ho, yo ho, yo ho, a pirate's life for me. Oh, a pirate's life. Okay, I'll stop singing. I just want to mention a little bit. I love that part. In even though I'd never been to the Disney parks, but hearing that in the Boot to You parade throughout YouTube is just probably the best part. But yeah, we are fine going into Pirates of the Caribbean: The Curse of the Black Pearl, which was ended up becoming a top 8 movie as Johnny Depp received a Best Actor nomination. I believe it was his first nomination of his career. Yeah, so yep, for those who don't know, yep, Depp, Captain Jack Sparrow was nominated for a Best Actor Oscar. So I am giving this one an A. It is a pretty unique beginning story of like obviously how origin of the interesting to know who Captain Jack Sparrow is and what his teams are, and obviously understand who Captain Barbossa. Jeffrey Rush is fantastic in this. Definitely would have been a great all time supporting actor nomination for his performance as Barbossa. If the movie was in Best Picture, Jeffrey Rush definitely would have been nominated. Keira Knightley is fantastic as the female character in the movie. The rest of this crew are fantastic, and I keep almost mistaking Kevin McNally with Jack Black because Kevin McNally, at least in the first film, looks a lot like Jack Black to me. I don't know why, but he really kind of did for me. Um, yeah, I really did have. I don't. I think this might be my favorite Pirates of the Caribbean movie easily because I actually did enjoy all 5 films. Yes, even including at World's End, On Stranger Tides, sorry, and Dead Man Tell No Tales. Very underrated for the latter one. But yeah, I do think The Curse of the Black Pearl is the best one out of the entire franchise. I do enjoy all 5 of them. I have the original trilogy on Blu-ray. Yet to get on Stranger Tides or The Curse of Dead Man Tell No Tales. I do have, of course, even Dead Man's Chest. But yeah, The Curse of the Black Pearl is easily the best movie in the entire franchise, and also kind of explains about piracy and also pirates, excuse me, and also pirates versus governors and stuff like that. That's pretty unique. And now we come into a very somber film here, not because of the movie, but just because of what happened a few weeks ago, of course, or the end of October, I believe. Um, as many of you know, we just lost Diane Keaton, of course, and we are now going into Something's Gotta Give, which was her final Oscar nomination and also co starring with Jack Nicholson. I am giving this one an A as well. This is a. No, actually, S. I really love this movie. It's a very fun, a really unique romance movie of having this widow or mother falling in love with another man that I believe her daughter brought originally as her lover, which is kind of very disturbing a bit. But then obviously when Nicholson comes into the house with obviously with Diane Keaton's character, that's when their relationship really becomes unique. Especially makes more sense than the old woman young woman relationship that just felt wrong to me in the beginning. That was the only kind of con thing I had about it at the beginning, but I love how they changed that up between these two. Jack Nicholson definitely should have gotten another Best Actor nomination. Like this would have been a perfect final nomination for him, more so than About Schmidt, I would say. But Yeah, this movie is really fun. It should have gotten an original screenplay nomination. I love the romance between the two characters here and the journeys that both of them have to deal with their own situations in one way, shape, or form. So I really loved how the ending turned out. And for me, I think Diane Keaton should have won this. I know she won for Annie Hall, but I'll be honest, I've yet to see that film. Yeah, I think she would have been a great Best Actress win if she would have won this over Charlize Theron. I'm sorry, not because she's gone, but it was the best performance out of the five. Next up is 13. Oh boy, this coming of age movie starring Evan Rachel Wood and Nikki Reed, along with Holly Hunter, which got her a Best Supporting Actress nomination, and even Brady Corbet, yes, the director of The Brutalist, was played as Tracy's brother in this movie, so that's pretty unique. Uh, the thing about it is, I'm gonna have to give this one. Yeah, I have to put this in E. I don't hate the film, so I'm not giving it an F, but I have to give this an E. It's just it almost feels like the stereotypical coming of age movie I know about, where Tracy goes from a completely different woman who she was at the very beginning at eighth grade to where she would be at the end, and with the relationship with her new best friend and stuff like that, and then things just go wrong, goes absolutely wrong for all the reasons of what she's supposed to do and what she's not supposed to do. Even her brother can't really help her a lot, as he's just trying her best uh, no, as he's trying his best to do what he can do to make sure his sister is like back the way she was, or not even his mother. But it's just like it kind of goes wrong all the ways in the end, and it unfortunately cost her a benefit not just for her a bit of her life, but also for her time at school as well. And that's kind of very unfortunate, of course, about the ending. But I just did not like how it just kind of falls in the format, and obviously the cinematography is just changing the colors of how downgrade the character goes. Kind of, I get that part with how the direction goes, but I just think it didn't work, especially when we get to near the ending of the film of how it goes from a completely different color format. It just like no, it just didn't work for me. I just don't think about this. So yeah, Holly Hunter. I don't have a remember much about her performance except maybe like two scenes or just in the ending when she's hugging Tracy, and that's it. I don't have a specific memory about this. Next up is Alejandro Gonzalez Inarritu's 21 Grams, starring Sean Penn, Benicio del Toro, which was nominated for Supporting Actor, and Naomi Watts who was nominated for Best Actress. I have to give this an E, and kind of similar to Memento and Mulholland Drive, it's absolutely confusing to me. Like, I don't know, like when it gets in the ending it's just like I don't know what the sum up was of the entire story if you go in the full linear format. Like it just didn't. I just don't know if it was the way the camera was shot or all three of their performances of how like Del Toro was supposed to do this to Sean Penn and Penn was supposed to do this to Watts, and then there are some things that are going on. It's just kind of convoluted to me. I think I already said that about that to the other two films, but yeah, it just doesn't make sense to me. It just like I don't know. It just doesn't work. I don't get it. It was just like, especially in the ending, it's just like, or the mess, what's supposed to be the climax of what actually happened, and after what Penn is supposedly after he got shot. It just doesn't make sense to me. And like, I could see like why, like, yeah, I might have preferred Penn's performance in Mystic River, even though I view that as a supporting performance. But yeah, I would have put Watson supporting as well, and maybe Penn is supporting because it's kind of hard when you have a movie that has three leads. You kind of don't know what is considered more of an ensemble piece or not. If it's two leads, then would have been fine. But they did, I would say, category for Naomi Watts, and they did put Benicio del Toro. So if they did put all 21 Grams cast members in supporting, Sean Penn definitely would have been nominated for both leading and supporting, even though he is supporting in Mystic River. And our last one from 2003 is Whale Rider, the New Zealand film starring Keisha Castle Hughes, who at the time was the youngest Best Actress nominee in the category until Quvenzhané Wallis took that over. I'm gonna give this one. I'm gonna have to give this an E as well. I don't have a fond memory of this movie in general. It's another one of those movies I don't have a memory of. Like other than like a lot of whales just at the beach and then just her at a talent show and stuff like that. I That's the only thing I do remember, and maybe a relationship with her father, I guess. But I don't really remember much about this movie. I think this was actually one of the first movies I did watch of the films that are on Blu-ray through Shout Factory. But at least from the Oscar nominated ones, like The Pianist and Adaptation and the Germany film Downfall, for an example. And it's just like, I don't know what is this. Obviously, I don't know much. I don't know if this is about like a New Zealand culture or indigenous New Zealand culture. I'm not really sure. It's just, I don't remember much about this film. Another movie I don't have remembers about this film is just kind of very bland. I remembered it was kind of, I wouldn't say bland, but it's just, I wouldn't say perfect either. All right, now we're wrapping up this first part of the video with the first half of the 2000s with 2004. At least there will be a little bit less, but we still got a couple of films to talk about. We will start this up with Before Sunset from Richard Linklater, the second film of the Before trilogy. Before I get into that, let me talk a little bit about my thoughts on Before Sunrise. Um, Before Sunrise is definitely one of the best romance movies I've seen. It is fantastic. I obviously have the Before trilogy on the collection. Sunset is pretty good, but not as good as the first film, but it is obviously only a 90-minute movie. It's just basically just like like an hour or two, just walking to with the two reuniting and just walking to her apartment, and then she just sings a song, and that's it. I'm gonna give Before Sun on set a B. Julie Delpy and Ethan Hawke's performances are still fantastic in this one, like they were in the original. Um, Hawke really had a lot of a standout in this one for me, to be precise. With Julie Delpy and definitely in the first one. And then you kind of have a situation with both of them in the third one. We'll get to Before Midnight in the part 3 of the retrospect of this tier list, but this is primarily focused on Sunset. So yeah, I did kind of like how this one, it was more of a little smaller reunion for them, not much change meant for them, but obviously kind of talking about what happened in between the events and of Sunrise and Sunset, of like what almost did not actually happen like a year later after Sunrise and stuff like that, if you've seen the movie. And the moment they're just kind of have this little, even though they are in relationships with one another now, um, in two different areas, but they would be officially together in Midnight, of course. But just kind of like having a little homage to the first film, and then like kind of like what to expect if they would end up becoming together, and some of the massive consequences, especially with Hawke having a son over back in the U.S. So Hawke's character specifically, of course. So yeah, and I obviously do like the how the cinematography does play in with just like these long take shots. It's just really well done, whether it be when they're just walking or underneath. I think they were on a boat at one point throughout the movie, so that's just really, really touching. And then when they're just back at her apartment, it's just very somber. It's just like just these two alone, with just a lot of background characters who are just being normal lives, I would say. So it's not as good as Sunset. Sunset's easily the best of the trilogy and one of my favorite romance movies. No, it's Sunrise. Excuse me, but Sunset definitely is a kind of almost like a summary follow up of explaining what happened after the events of Sunrise. It did got an adapted screenplay nomination, by the way, for Linklater, Kim Krzan, and both Hawke and Delpy, but it's odd that Before Sunset never got an original screenplay nomination. Like, that was 95, you gotta remember. That was the lineup when we had Braveheart, Mighty Aphrodite, Nixon, Toy Story, and The Usual Suspects. The question is, if Before Sunrise was nominated original, which one you would have replaced it with? Next up is Being Julia, which is kind of like almost like a fictitious story of like a fictional story of a famous theater actress who's kind of almost like not really as popular as she thinks he is, but when she is in an affair relationship with her husband by having fun with I think an American and a young American that is vacation over the UK, because Julia is supposed to be British. That's when like she really kind of feels like she's a young woman again, as she thought she once was. And then the situation of her being in charge of a woman. I actually really like this movie. I'm gonna put this one. I'm actually gonna put this in S. I really loved being Julia here. It's just Annette Bening really captivates the performance, and unlike Bridget Jones's Diary and About a Boy, Annette Bening did a fantastic British accent as in this movie, and with her co-star with Jeremy Irons and with the young man, I forget who the actor's name was, Sean Evans, that's who it was. And the reason it's just so amazing to see, just like, okay, yeah, I know it's kind of odd. It's very odd when I mentioned about Something's Gotta Give, where this old man young woman relationship status at the beginning just felt uncomfortable for me. I think it's just because ever since the Me Too movement, and you could also say the same thing with old woman young man. I think I already talked about this when I mentioned about Licorice Pizza, so I'm not going to go through that again. But yeah, I think this is kind of one of the best ones, and even one of the best affair movies that I've seen. And also, if you're big, more fond of the theater industry, I also recommend you give this a watch. If you took in like a drama class like I did at high school, and even I obviously even obviously if you looked at some of my older videos of doing vlogs of the comedy trip that I did in high school, if you were fond of the theater industry, kind of like I said this about Drive My Car, you're gonna really love Being Julia, as well as another movie that we'll get into the next part for 2005. But yeah, this is a very fantastic movie. Well, very crafted in both the theater industry and also a great story on one of the better affair movies. Speaking of affairs that didn't really work out for me, I would say, and that is Mike Nichols' Closer, which earned two supporting acting nominations for. Benning was nominated for Best Actress, by the way. Clive Owen was nominated for Supporting Actor, and Natalie Portman was nominated for Supporting Actress. Yeah, I'm gonna agree with the critics. I felt mixed on this one. I'm gonna give this one an E. It's just a lot of E's on this right now so far. Yeah. It's just like with just with all four of these characters kind of almost going in the one way, shape, or form, especially with Julia Roberts' character and Clive Owen's character with their relationships with Julia Roberts' husband, and then of course with Clive Owen with the stripper played by Portman. It's just like with Roberts, I believe, playing this famous photographer, and then just like all the situations they're going with all their relationships. It's just like I feel like I've seen this somewhat before, and I can see why it wasn't a big critic's favorite. Like especially like it was big into the BAFTAs a bit, but like I see why it wasn't in for picture or director or adapted screenplay or Roberts or Jude Law. Yeah, it's just not right. It's very odd because I know Mike Nichols had obviously did some unique romance speculation, of course, with The Graduate, which worked phenomenally. That's a classic, of course, but not for Closer, I would say. Now we're into Michael Mann's Collateral, which I think is one of Chris Stuckman's all-time favorite movies, as he stated, I believe. But it's also notable for being the film to have one of the most infamous category frauds in history, with Jamie Foxx nominated for supporting actor in his lead performance. Even though he won Best Actor for Ray, a lot of people say they prefer Collateral over Ray. I probably would prefer Ray over Collateral, but he's great in both those films, as well as Tom Cruise. I'm giving this one a B. Very suspense. It's just that there is a lot of not really much a lot of suspense, but like especially in the climax, but like with Fox's relationship with Jada Pinkett Smith's character, it's just something that doesn't really do much in me. I think that's my only kind of big gripe about it. But like Cruise is very threatening in this movie of what he does, and then all the difficult situations of him at like playing this almost like wants to kill almost everybody as he wants to. It's been a bit of since I've seen this movie, but wow, I remember watching a live stream of this movie club, of a movie club discussion about this movie, and I watched it prior to it, and it was really well done, and how they were talking about it's really fantastic. Yeah, Cruise is definitely great in this, but Jamie Foxx also as well. The way how the camera was shot is just well. The editing was great. Um, I obviously, as you can see, I probably do prefer Ali over Collateral. Because they might have a little bit of minor issues, but I think I would prefer Ali more. So I think it's just because of the sporting thing. When you just look at between the two Michael Mann movies, I probably would prefer Ali over Collateral. I know some people might disagree with me on that, but I do like both of them. All right, time for Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, which was nominated for Best Actress for Kate Winslet in her supporting performance. I did find her supporting because Jim Carrey was the true lead of the film. And also our last non-best picture movie to win not just original screenplay, but screenplay in general for Charlie Kaufman, director Michel Gondry, and Pierre Smith. Ladies and gentlemen, I give Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind a double S tier. This is a true masterpiece. Yeah, a lot of people will agree with me on it. A lot of people will disagree, but yeah, it is a masterpiece for me. I think this is my favorite work from Charlie Kaufman that I've seen, even though it's not really his film. This is more Michel Gondry's film. But the whole creative way of how they did this, like in this dream scenario, that I know Paprika and Inception would do, but I think, but more so those two have a completely different scenario because the Eternal Sunshine Dreams is a little bit different of how the dreams would in order for you to lose your memory. But the way how the relationship between Carrie and Winslet's characters are, and then you have to kind of understand what's going on until when you get to the very ending of what happened. It's just like, and the way how all these characters did it was just fantastic. Like, obviously, in the first scene when they meet, you just see them as a lovely couple, but then somehow they ended off their relationship. But then you go through this puzzle throughout almost inside the dreams from both of the characters, and then you kind of understand where everything is going until when you get to the very end. And so the way how Michel Gondry's direction was really fantastic. Jim Carrey definitely should have gotten a Best Actor nomination. I mean, it's very interesting. He was famously snubbed for The Truman Show, and yet this could have been his makeup nomination for it. I mean, the movie did win original screenplay, but he probably would have, in place of me, probably I would say Clint Eastwood for Million Dollar Baby, or somebody else that we'll get into our next pick here. But yeah, Winslet is pretty good, but I think it's more of her hair dyes that stood out to me more so. But I did like the opening portion of her when the two characters do meet for the first time, and then you have to go through this puzzle to try to figure out. At least that worked compared to the other movies like Memento, Mulholland Drive, and 21 Grams. This one really understood to me because I think the way how Charlie Kaufman scripted the dialogue just worked well with the performances and the direction from Michel Gondry. And now we're into Hotel Rwanda from Terry George, which was up for Best Actor for Don Cheadle before he became War Machine, and that was his only Oscar nomination. His only Oscar nomination to date, by the way. Supporting actress for Sofia Kodenko, and original screenplay. I am putting this one in C. Now, I really do like the concept of what this movie was going on under the military, like the issues going on with the military wars going on between the main Rwanda military and the United Nations military led by Nick Nolte, and how the protection of this hotel to avoid from this dangerous malicious people. But I just think maybe the casting of having an American actor like Don Cheadle and Sophie Okoneko, I forget which country of origin she's from. Oh, she's from the UK, so I really wish they would have done actual two notable actors from that country to play the main roles that Don Cheadle and Sophie Okoneko did. Like, you can keep Nick Nolte as the United Nations military guy, but I just think maybe there was a bit of a miscasting, I would say, between the two of them, even though I know they did got their only Oscar nominations in their careers. Maybe it also could be some of the performances, and some of the characters are just not really that likable. But I love the whole concept of like how this hotel becomes a very serious issue throughout during this little bit of a war going on in the country. Now into The Incredibles. Yes, our next Pixar film here, our winner for animated feature that year, and it was nominated for original screenplay. And it, by the way, the only animated film so far to have only one person nominated for its screenplay nomination, because Brad Bird was the sole writer of the film, no one else. All the other screenplay nominees for an animated film all had either screenplay writers and story writers or just anything like that. So yeah, The Incredibles is the only one where it was just one sole writer that was the nominee, and that was Brad Bird himself. Now, unlike some of the other Pixar films, I didn't really had a lot of fond memories with The Incredibles when I was a kid. Even though it's still pretty great as it is, I am gonna put it in B. It's just that Okay, maybe I might understand the movie a lot more now as an adult, especially if you've seen the Unlucky Tug's review of The Incredibles of how adult, more adult the movie is with the subject matter, especially with Bob going through this midlife crisis, and I can see where that's coming from him at the very beginning, and then trying to be a superhero again is something that really does. Um, it's really great. Actually, yeah, I'm gonna put it more so in A, not B. So yeah, The Incredibles goes in A because I'm thinking about the sequel right now. The sequel will probably go into that tier, but yeah, The Incredibles definitely would be now in more of an A tier. The action's really great. Syndrome is a fantastic villain, and the way how build him up was fantastic. I didn't even know that was Jason Lee, who obviously plays Dave in the Alvin and the Chipmunks movies. I did not know that was him as Syndrome. I knew Holly Hunter was Elastigirl and Craig T. Nelson as Bob, and obviously everyone knows Samuel L. Jackson as Frozone. Where is my super suit? Yeah, and obviously Brad Bird as Etna Mode. But yeah, the action's really great. The whole concept of family is very fantastic, and yeah, even though the animation like look weird now because obviously how early 2000s computer animation is, but keeping like in a 50s homage of what Brad was doing, what Unlucky Tug was mentioning in his review of how the designs are, is especially how they're more like shaped size characters in this world. I really do appreciate what the Pixar team animators did well. But yeah, what Brad Bird really needed to make this movie, obviously, especially after when his debut feature, The Iron Giant, bombed at the box office, and now it's become a animated classic for many people. But The Incredibles is definitely still a lot of people having fun. Even though I didn't have a lot of fun with my childhood, but I really do appreciate it, especially with the first Pixar film to have primarily have humans as the main characters. Oh boy. Now, if you want to talk about sex education, then you probably want to watch Kingsley. Oh boy. This is a very interesting one. This earned a Best Supporting Actress nomination for Laura Linney, but not for Liam Neeson for Best Actor. This was the closest movie he would have gotten after Schindler's List to receive another Oscar nomination, but nope. Schindler's List is still his only nomination. I'm going to give this one a B. I really do enjoy the idea, obviously, the real life story of this famous sex educational teacher, and obviously the relationships that he would have, and obviously that ended up becoming the revealment of his sexuality, and obviously the relationships he would have with Laura Linney's character, and I believe with Peter Skarsgård's character. But there is a lot of weird moments, of course, and obviously there is obviously one scene, obviously where there is a bit of a nudity showing that he shows to the at a college class, and oh my gosh, that was kind of a little bit disturbing to me because, like I said, nudity in movies is not really something that's not really my thing. So yeah, it's just like watching that. It's just like okay, I probably want to skip that scene if I revisit the movie, but understanding of who Kingsley actually was, what his mission was as a professor is just pretty good. And Liam Neeson did give a fantastic performance and definitely a fantastic casting choice. I don't remember much of what Laura Linney did in this movie. I don't remember anything because I'm trying to think here. I might have to look at some clips to remember what her performance was. I know what her role was, but I just don't know what her character did in the movie. I forgot. But yeah, um, definitely also really kind of unique way of explaining sex education in a movie instead of so that people would not have to do it in class. But obviously, this is kind of like a bit of an LGBTQ plus theme movie because the main character is bisexual. Not really much of a spoiler there, sorry. But yeah, it is a pretty interesting concept to go through that of a real life person who has this kind of a thing for sexual education. Now into Maria Full of Grace. So this is a very interesting movie. This obviously earned a Best Actress nomination for Catalina Sedana Moreno. Now, Colombia did originally try to submit this film for Best International Feature, but it was ruled ineligible due to it being a big collaboration between them and the United States. So obviously, this involves with a massive immigration issue revolving around these young women going into the U.S. to bring in drugs. And as many of you know, what's going on right now in some Southern American countries, yeah, it's not really the perfect time into about the subject matter of what's going on right now. But the story of having these young ladies bring drugs in their bodies, like they have to suck it in their bodies, and then and they would have to get like some sort of surgical procedure or just have to poop it out to get them out or out of their. Oh my gosh, I'm really sorry I had to mention that, but I just feel disturbed by this. I'm gonna have to give this a D. Catalina Sedana Moreno does a pretty good job with her performance, but it's just, and the story seemed interesting. But I think but it does feel like I is another one of these films. I think I've seen this before, and I think it's the typical real life story that we know for a fact. But it's just without trying to offend any people, especially any offends in the South or any Hispanics or Latin people. It's just kind of very difficult because seeing the struggle, but obviously the struggling of the innocents as well. That's kind of a difficult situation. But like a lot of the gangster stories and a lot of the relationships, and especially with Maria, I think that's her name, I believe, unless if I'm mistaken. But yeah, it just doesn't really suit well for me, to be precise. Going back to South America, let's talk about The Motorcycle Diaries from Walter Salas, which earned an adapted screenplay nomination and actually a win for original song for A la Toledad del Rio. Now, this movie actually was not submitted by Brazil or any other Southern American countries for international feature that year because it was a massive collaboration between multiple countries. So, with that, it probably would have been ruled ineligible, but it did benefit for it at least being a screenplay nominee and a win for original song. And this stars Gal Garcia Bernal as a very young Shay. I forget what was his last name, but I know what the name is. But I would just call him Shay. During his early years, like as a almost like an inspirational doctor and like what he wants to do, and also throughout going to all these countries throughout his time as a medical procedure. I'm gonna give this one an A. I really do enjoy this road trip movie, and just also seeing what Shay was before he became very notorious, especially in Cuba, of course. Years later, as an adult, I know Steven Soderbergh has his two-part Shay movie, but this is like going into in his youth days. Gal Garcia Bernal did a fantastic performance as this. All the characters that he interacts with are pretty memorable, and all the destinations he goes to. Walter Salas did a pretty good job directing. I think this might be my favorite. Well, then again, I've not seen Central Station, so I can't really say, but I would prefer this over I'm Still Here, I will say. I'm sorry, but I do think this is a great one. The script is by Jose Rivera is pretty good, but Salas' direction of the performances just really makes the characters and a lot of the scenery very, very well crafted. And our final film in 2004 and for the first half of the 2000s is Vera Drake from Mike Leigh, which earned a directing nomination for him as well as original screenplay and a Best Actress nomination for Imelda Staunton, her only Oscar nomination of her career. And I'm going to put this one in S. I really do like this, love this movie. It is obviously involving around a serious subject matter that obviously it deals with, which of course is regarding abortion. And our titular character, who plays this cleaning maid, technically is also a person that does illegal abortion moves because it's considered illegal in the country, depending on the setting in the movie. Because I think it's like an old setting, like somewhere in some sort of decade. Because I know it's not a modern setting, of course. Um, but she does these for women's safeties, but some of which might not do good for some of the ladies, and this could really also hit a massive conflict between her, but also with her family, who don't even know about this. Not even her husband, played by Phil Davis, who is fantastic in this. But she just also shows that she is just an innocent, caring woman who's trying to help those that did not want to have a baby. But there are some massive problems that do occur, and you can understand the innocence of our main character. And Imelda Staunton really does a fantastic job on this, even though she feels like she does or doesn't want to do it. Like, this is definitely a movie that really kind of fits well because of the subject of abortion rights. As somebody who's pro choice, you can understand why a woman doesn't want to have an abortion, and then I can understand why there are some bigger issues, especially in course to any rape cases, or especially regarding issues like teenage pregnancy. um, it's just like it just really has a lot of issues. Even though this is kind of like a period setting, like it just really feels relevant to this, and I really had a really connection. Mike Lee really did a great job on writing the story, and Imelda Staunton's performance. It definitely would have been a great Best Picture nomination because the Oscars really had a hit or miss with Mike Lee because they did went big with Secrets and Lies, then a bit on Topsy Turvy, and then Vera Drake, and then they only gave another year a screenplay nomination, which we'll get into, and then Mr. Turner, which only played in the text. After which they didn't really do much with Mike Lee afterwards. But yeah, I think I think Imelda Staunton would have been my pick for Best Actress, but Annette Bening is a very close second, I would say. But both of them are fantastic. I really have to think about it. But yeah, Bening and Staunton definitely would have been one of my two picks over Hilary Swank in Million Dollar Baby. But I really have to think about that when I do my personal lineups for 2004.